Step into the forgotten corners of history, where the unsung heroes of humanity toiled through endless days of repetitive labor digging, weaving, cataloging, and surviving. These 15 stories unravel the quiet resilience of ordinary lives, from medieval peasants to Inca road builders, revealing how their mundane tasks wove the fabric of civilization, perfect for drifting off to sleep. This series immerses you in the soothing rhythm of history's overlooked routines, proving that even the dullest chores shaped our world in profound ways. Let these tales of endurance lull you into a peaceful slumber. The endless chores of a medieval peasant. Imagine you awaken before the first light of dawn filters through the cracks in your thatched hut. The year is around 1250 in a small village in England's countryside. The air is thick with the scent of damp earth and wood smoke from last night's dying fire. As a medieval peasant, your life is bound to the rhythms of the seasons and the demands of the land. A cycle so repetitive and unyielding that it shapes every waking moment. You rise from your straw pallet, shared with your family in this single-room dwelling, where the floor is packed earth and the walls are wattle and daub-woven sticks, plastered with mud and dung for insulation against the chill winds. Your day begins with the most basic of tasks, tending to the animals that sustain your existence. You step outside into the misty morning, your feet bare or wrapped in rough cloth, and head to the small enclosure where your ox, a few sheep, and perhaps a pig or two are kept. Feeding them comes first. You scatter handfuls of hay or leftover scraps from the previous harvest, ensuring the ox is strong enough for plowing. This beast is your most valuable possession, often shared with neighbors under the feudal system, where you owe labor to the local lord in exchange for protection and the right to farm strips of land in the open fields. The feudal manor is the world you know, a self-contained universe of obligations. You are a villain tied to the land, required to work the Lord's domain, his personal fields, for several days each week, known as boon work. On other days, you cultivate your own allotted strips in the common fields, scattered among those of your fellow villagers to ensure fair distribution of fertile and poor soil. The three-field system dominates here. One field planted with wheat or rye for bread, another with legumes like peas or beans to restore the soil's nutrients, and the third left fallow for grazing. You recall how this rotation, introduced centuries ago, prevents the land from exhausting itself. A quiet innovation born of necessity rather than fanfare. As the sun crests the horizon, you join the other peasants in the fields, tools in hand, wooden plow if you're fortunate, or a simple hoe and sickle forged by the village blacksmith. Plowing is arduous. You guide the ox through the heavy clay soil, furrows turning slowly under the weight. Sweat beads on your brow despite the cool air, and your back aches from the constant bending. Weeds must be pulled by hand, a tedious process that occupies hours as you kneel among the sprouting crops, fingers numb from the damp ground. Birds circle overhead, waiting to snatch seeds, so you or the children scatter stones to scare them away. Your wife and older children assist, perhaps spinning wool from the sheep or gathering firewood from the communal woods, where rights to collect dead branches of stovers are strictly regulated to prevent overuse. Meals are simple and sparse. reflecting the precarious balance of survival. Breakfast might be a hunk of coarse rye bread, baked in the communal oven for a fee paid to the Lord, washed down with weak ale brewed from barley. Ale is safer than water, often contaminated from nearby streams used for washing and waste. You eat quickly, knowing the midday meal pottage, a stew of vegetables, herbs, and whatever meat is available, like salted pork, on rare occasions must wait until the sun is high. Famine lurks as a constant shadow. A poor harvest from bad weather or blight could mean starvation, as it did in the Great Famine of 1315 to 1317, though that's yet to come in your time. You pay tithes to the church, a tenth of your produce, stored in the tithe barn, and render other dues like heriata, fine upon death, often your best animal. Village life revolves around these chores, interspersed with communal decisions at the manor court, where disputes over field boundaries or stray animals are settled. You interact with the reeve, the Lord's overseer, ensuring work quotas are met. Sundays offer respite for church attendance. But even then, the priest's sermons remind you of your place in the divine order, lords above, peasants below, all part of God's plan. Yet, in quiet moments, you ponder the whispers of unrest, like the occasional runaway serf seeking freedom in a town, where a year and a day of residence grants liberty. As the afternoon wears on, you turn to mending fences or repairing tools. The sun dipping lower, casting long shadows over the fields. But what if the Lord demands extra labor for a new project, like digging ditches for drainage? How does this unceasing toil, day after day, begin to stir subtle changes in the social fabric? Changes that might one day upend the feudal order itself. As you trudge back to the fields after a brief midday meal, the weight of your obligations as a medieval peasant in 1250 England presses harder. The pottage, a warm mix of cabbage, onions, and beans, fortified you, but the ache in your limbs persists. The sun climbs higher, and you return to the open fields, where the communal effort of the village shapes the landscape. Your strip of land, narrow and uneven, lies among those of your neighbors, marked by stones or hedges that sometimes spark disputes. The manor court, presided over by the Lord's steward, resolves these petty conflicts, but you know every decision reinforces the hierarchy that binds you. The reeve, a fellow peasant elected to oversee work, watches closely, ensuring you meet your quota of labor for the Lord's domain before tending your own crops. The work is relentless. You guide the plow through the heavy soil, the ox snorting with effort as it pulls. The wooden plowshare, reinforced with a thin iron tip when you can afford it, catches on roots or stones, jarring your arms. If the ox falters, you must pause to check its hooves or adjust the yoke, a task requiring patience and strength. The fields hum with activity. Women and children weed, scatter manure, or drive birds away with slings. Your wife, meanwhile, might be at the village's edge, milking the cow or shearing sheep, her hands rough from spinning wool with a drop spindle. Every task, no matter how small, is a thread in the fabric of survival, woven with the knowledge that a single failed harvest could tip the balance toward hunger. Life is not just labor. It's governed by customs and dues that dictate your existence. Beyond the days spent on the Lord's fields, you owe other payments: stallage, an arbitrary tax, or merchet, a fee to marry off your daughter. The mill, owned by the Lord, grinds your grain for a portion of the flour, and the communal oven bakes your bread for another fee. These obligations chip away at your yield, leaving just enough to feed your family through winter. You've heard tales of the villages past, when a bountiful harvest allowed a rare feast, with ale flowing and a pig roasted for all. But such moments are fleeting, overshadowed by the grind of daily chores and the ever-present threat of crop failure or disease. Like the murrain that once decimated livestock, the village itself is a web of interdependence. You share tools with neighbors, barter labor for goods, or pool resources to maintain the church or repair the bridge over the stream. Gossip and news spread during these moments, tales of a distant king's war or a peddler's arrival with salt or iron. The church looms large, not just as a spiritual center, but as a landlord demanding tithes. You attend Mass, standing on the cold stone floor, listening to Latin prayers you barely understand, yet the priest's authority is unquestioned. Still, you notice subtle shifts, a neighbor who grumbles about the Lord's latest demand for extra labor, or a young man who speaks of fleeing to a town where freedom might be won after a year and a day. As evening nears, you turn to smaller tasks, mending a broken fence or sharpening a sickle by the firelight. The village quiets, save for the lowing of cattle or the creak of a cart. You reflect on the stories of your ancestors who worked these same fields, their lives as bound as yours, yet whispers of change linger. The towns are growing, markets bustling, and some peasants now pay rent in coin rather than labor. Could such shifts loosen the chains of serfdom, or will they merely replace one burden with another? As the sun dips below the horizon in your 1250 English village, the day's labor winds down, and you, a medieval peasant, return to your thatched hut. The fire inside casts a dim glow, warming the cramped space where your family gathers. Supper. Is pottage again? Thickened with oats and flavored with wild herbs your children foraged from the hedgerows. You eat in silence, the exhaustion of plowing, weeding, and tending livestock settling into your bones. Outside, the village settles too, the rhythmic creak of a neighbor's loom or the distant bleat of a sheep punctuating the stillness. Yet, even in this quiet, your mind turns to the unyielding cycle of chores that will greet you at dawn. The feudal system, with its web of obligations to lord, church, and community, feels as immovable as the heavy clay soil you till. But life, even in its monotony, is not without moments of resilience. Last spring, when a flood threatened the village's crops, you and your neighbors worked through the night, digging channels to divert the water. The effort saved enough of the harvest to stave off starvation, a small victory born of collective toil. Such moments bind the village together, reinforcing the unwritten rules of mutual survival. You teach your children the skills passed down through generations, how to judge the soil's readiness, when to sow barley, or how to mend a torn net for catching fish in the stream. These lessons, mundane as they seem, are your legacy, ensuring your family's survival in a world where a single bad season could spell ruin. The manor court looms tomorrow, a gathering where disputes over stray animals or unpaid dues will be settled. You'll stand before the steward, cap in hand, as he records your labor or fines in his ledger. The Lord, rarely seen, remains a distant figure, his castle a looming reminder of your place. Yet, you've heard rumors of change, peasants in nearby manors paying rent in coin rather than days of labor, a shift spurred by growing towns and markets. Some even speak of charters granting villages limited freedoms. These whispers stir a cautious hope, though you know freedom comes at a cost. Coin is scarce, and the Lord's demands never lessen. Last year, when a neighbor fled to a town, his family was fined heavily, their best cow taken as Harriet. Such risks tempered dreams of escape. As you lie on your straw pallet, the fire reduced to embers, you reflect on your life's small triumphs: a healthy child, a harvest stored safely, a repaired roof that holds against the rain. These are the threads of resilience woven through the endless chores. The feudal order, with its rigid hierarchy, seems eternal, yet history tells us it was not. Decades later, events like the Black Death of 1348 to 1351 would decimate populations, creating labor shortages that empowered peasants to demand wages or flee to towns, weakening the bonds of serfdom. Your life, though unrecorded, is a foundation for those shifts. Each furrow you plow a step toward a world where freedom might grow. What does your story teach us today? In a world of modern routines, endless emails, commutes, and deadlines, life reminds us that resilience lies in the small, repetitive acts of endurance. The quiet persistence of ordinary people, working day after day, shapes history as much as kings or wars. Your chores, though forgotten, were the heartbeat of a changing world, proving that even the most mundane lives carry weight in the long arc of time. The daily toil on ancient Egyptian Nile farms. Picture yourself rising with the first light of dawn in ancient Egypt, around 1500 BCE, in a small village along the Nile's fertile banks. The air is cool, carrying the scent of silt and water, as the river's gentle lapping greets you. As a farmer in this land, your life revolves around the Nile's rhythms. Its annual flood, known as the inundation, deposits rich silt that makes the surrounding fields some of the most fertile in the ancient world. Your home, a mud brick house with a flat roof, sits near the village's edge, its walls plastered with Nile mud to keep out the heat. You share this space with your family, sleeping on red mats, with a small hearth for cooking and a few clay pots for storing grain. Your day begins early, before the sun climbs high and turns the air scorching. You head to the fields, a patchwork of small plots owned by your family or worked for the local temple or noble. The inundation has just receded, leaving the soil dark and heavy with silt. Your task is to prepare the land for planting emmer, wheat, and barley, the staples that feed Egypt and fill the granaries of the pharaoh. You carry a wooden hoe, its blade worn from years of use, and a basket for sowing seeds. The work is backbreaking, breaking up clods of earth, digging shallow furrows, and scattering seeds by hand. Oxen, if you're fortunate to share one with neighbors, pull a simple plow, but many tasks rely on your own strength. The Nile's gift comes with demands. The pharaoh, seen as a living god, claims a portion of your harvest as tax, stored in vast granaries to feed the elite, priests, and workers building monuments like the pyramids. You also owe labor corvée to maintain the irrigation canals that channel the Nile's water to distant fields. These canals, dug and repaired by farmers like you, are a marvel of collective effort, ensuring water reaches every plot during the dry season. You work alongside neighbors, using baskets to move earth or reeds to reinforce canal banks, all under the watchful eye of an overseer appointed by the local governor. Life is not just labor, it's woven with rituals. You pause to offer a small prayer to Hapi, the god of the Nile, for a good flood next season. A small shrine near the fields holds offerings of bread or beer brewed from your barley. Meals are simple, flatbread onions, and perhaps fish caught from the Nile, dried or salted to last. Your wife and children help, weaving baskets from papyrus reeds, or tending a small garden of leeks and garlic. The village buzzes with activity: potters shaping clay, weavers crafting linen from flax grown nearby. Every task, from sowing to harvesting, ties you to the land and the river that sustains it. Yet, the Nile's predictability is not guaranteed. A flood too high could wash away your crops, too low, and drought could starve the village. You've heard stories of such years, when granaries emptied and families bartered tools or cloth for food. As you stand in the field, sweat dripping into the soil, you wonder, what happens if the Nile fails you? How does a farmer's toil, so tied to the river's whims, shape not just your life, but the stability of Egypt itself? The midday sun beats down on your village along the Nile, its heat relentless as you continue your work as a farmer in 1500 BCE Egypt. The fields stretch before you, a mosaic of green shoots emerging from the silt-rich soil, a testament to the labor you poured into planting. You pause to check the irrigation channels, ensuring water flows evenly from the Nile to your crops. Using a shadoof, a simple lever with a bucket, you lift water from the canal to higher fields, a task that strains your shoulders but is vital during the growing season. Known as pare, your neighbors work nearby, some hauling baskets of silt to reinforce canal banks, others guiding water to their plots. This shared effort binds the village, as each farmer's survival depends on the collective maintenance of the irrigation system. Your crops, myrrh, wheat, barley, and flax, are the lifeblood of your family and the pharaoh's economy. The harvest will be measured by overseers who record yields on papyrus scrolls for the temple or noble who owns the land. A portion goes to the granaries, ensuring the elite are fed and surplus is stored for lean years. You've seen these granaries, towering mud brick structures near the temple, guarded by scribes who track every basket of grain. Your own share is modest enough to feed your family and barter for necessities like salt or a new hoe. The surplus also supports the artisans and laborers building the pharaoh's monuments. A distant world of stone and glory you'll never see. Daily life is punctuated by small rituals. At noon, you rest under a palm tree, sharing bread and beer with fellow farmers. The beer, thick and slightly sour, is brewed by your wife from barley, a staple that doubles as currency in local markets. You trade stories of past floods or the rare visit of a tax collector whose demands can leave a family with little. The village is a tight-knit community with potters, weavers, and fishermen contributing to its rhythm. Your children learn by doing, carrying water or chasing birds from the fields. Yet the gods loom large offerings to Osiris, god of agriculture, are left at the field's edge, a plea for fertility and protection from pests like locusts, which can strip a field bare in hours. The Nile's flood is a miracle, but it demands vigilance. You've heard of years when the flood was too weak, leaving fields parched, or too strong, drowning crops and homes. Such disasters ripple beyond the village, threatening the pharaoh's stores and the stability of the kingdom. You recall a tale from your father about a low flood that forced families to eat bitter wild plants, their children weakening from hunger. The scribes, ever watchful, note the Nile's height, using kilometers, stone steps carved into the riverbank to predict the season's yield. Their records, you're told, guide the pharaoh's plans, but you wonder how much they care for a farmer's plight. As the day wanes, you repair a broken shadoof, its wooden pole splintered from overuse. The village quiets, save for the hum of evening prayers at the temple. You think of the stories of great pharaohs, their names carved in stone, built on the backs of farmers like you. But what happens when the Nile's rhythm falters and the granaries stand empty? How does your quiet toil, so vital yet unseen, hold the weight of an empire? The harvest season, Shemu, arrives, and you stand in your Nile-side field, sickle in hand, reaping the golden stalks of emmer wheat under the relentless Egyptian sun of 1500 BC. The air hums with the sound of farmers working, their songs blending with the rustle of crops. Your family joins you, binding sheaves or gleaning stray grains, every kernel precious. The yield is good this year, the Nile's flood having been neither too high nor too low. Yet, as you load baskets for the granary, an overseer counts each one, ensuring the pharaoh's sheriffon half your crop reaches the temple's stores. What remains must feed your family through the next flood cycle, with a little left to barter for a new tool or linen cloth at the market. The harvest is a time of cautious relief, but also of reckoning. Tax collectors, accompanied by scribes, visit the village, their papyrus records detailing each farmer's dues. You've prepared for this, setting aside grain, but the weight of obligation is heavy. Some neighbors, caught short by a poor plot or illness, face harsh penalties, extra labor, or even the loss of a small plot. The village elders mediate disputes, but the pharaoh's authority, channeled through the local nomarch, is absolute. You've seen the granaries filled to bursting, a symbol of Egypt's strength. Yet you know a single bad season could empty them, leaving villages like yours vulnerable. Community sustains you through this toil. The harvest ends with a modest festival where families share beer and bread, and children dance to the beat of drums. You offer thanks to Osiris and Hapi, their statues adorned with flowers at the village shrine. These moments of connection remind you that your labor, though grueling, feeds not just your family but the artisans, priests, and builders who create Egypt's wonders. The pyramids, temples, and obelisks, far from your village, are built on the surplus of your fields, a fact both humbling and burdensome. Your life, like the Nile, flows in cycles. The inundation will come again, and with it, the same tasks: clearing silt, repairing canals, sowing seeds. Yet, history shows your toil was not in vain. The Nile's reliability, coupled with the ingenuity of farmers like you, made Egypt a breadbasket, sustaining its civilization for millennia. When droughts or invasions struck, as they did in later centuries, the granaries you helped fill kept famine at bay, preserving order. Your unrecorded life, one of millions, underpinned the glory of pharaohs like Hatshepsut or Ramesses II, whose reigns depended on the quiet resilience of the land. What does your story teach us today? In an age of automation and abundance, your life reminds us of the fragility beneath prosperity. The Nile's predictability, like modern systems, could falter, and the labor of ordinary people, farmers, workers, maintainers, holds society together. Your endless toil, uncelebrated, yet essential, echoes in the unnoticed efforts of those who sustain our world, from farmers to infrastructure workers. The lesson is clear: greatness, whether a pyramid or a modern city, rests on the steady, unremarkable work of countless hands, each as vital as the river that shaped your life. The monotonous routines of Victorian mill workers. Imagine you wake to the shrill whistle of the factory in a Lancashire town, England in 1850, the heart of the Industrial Revolution. The air is thick with coal smoke, and the dawn barely pierces the fog as you rise from a narrow bed in a cramped, damp row house shared with your family and perhaps a lodger or two. You're a mill worker, one of thousands drawn to the cotton mills that hum with the clatter of machinery, transforming raw cotton into thread and cloth for the British Empire. Your home, a two-room tenement, smells of mildew and yesterday's boiled cabbage. The walls are thin, and the sounds of neighbors coughing or arguing seep through as you pull on worn boots and a threadbare shawl against the morning chill. Your day begins with a quick breakfast bread, perhaps a smear of dripping and weak. Before you join the stream of workers heading to the mill, the streets are cobbled and slick with soot, lined with identical houses built by the mill owner for workers like you. The mill looms ahead, a massive brick building with tall chimneys belching smoke, its windows small and grimy, letting in little light. You work in the spinning room, where cotton is spun into thread, a process driven by steam-powered machines that never stop. Your job is to tend the spinning mules, long machines with hundreds of spindles, ensuring the threads don't break as they twist and wind. The work is repetitive and relentless. You stand for 12 to 14 hours, moving back and forth along the mule as it slides on its tracks, piecing together broken threads with nimble fingers. The air is thick with cotton dust, which coats your throat and lungs, making you cough, a common ailment known as mill fever. The noise is deafening, a constant roar of machinery that drowns out voices, so you communicate with gestures or shouts. Overseers patrol, quick to fine you for a moment's lapse or a tangled thread. Children, some as young as 8, scurry under the machines, sweeping up fluff or fetching bobbins. Their small size suited to tight spaces, but vulnerable to injury. The mill operates on a rigid schedule. The whistle signals the start at 6 a.m., with a half-hour break for lunch, often a cold pie or porridge brought from home, eaten on the factory floor. Wages are low, barely enough to cover rent and food, and are paid in tokens redeemable only at the company shop, where prices are inflated. You're part of a family economy. Your wife or children may work too, their earnings pooled to survive. The mill owner, a distant figure, profits from your labor, while you live week to week, saving nothing. Sundays offer rest, but church attendance is expected, and the vicar's sermons often stress obedience and hard work. The mill is a world of its own, a microcosm of Victorian industry. You know the cotton comes from distant places, America or India, but your focus is the immediate, keeping the machine running, avoiding the overseer's wrath, staying awake through the grinding hours. Yet, you hear murmurs of discontent workers, whispering about strikes or unions, risky ideas that could cost your job. As you trudge home, body aching, you wonder, how long can this relentless routine endure, and what might happen if workers like you demand change? The mill's whistle pierces the midday haze, signaling your brief lunch break in the spinning room of the Lancashire Cotton Mill. 1850. You sit on the gritty floor, unwrapping a cloth bundle holding a slice of bread and a bit of cheese, your hands stained with cotton lint. The air is stifling, heavy with heat from the steam engines below and the ever-present dust that clogs your lungs. Around you, other workers, men, women, and children, eat quickly, their faces etched with fatigue. The spinning mules, momentarily still, loom like iron beasts, their spindles gleaming faintly in the dim light filtering through the mill's high windows. You know the whistle will sound again soon, pulling you back to the relentless rhythm of piecing threads and dodging the overseer's sharp eye. Your role as a spinner is central to the mill's output. The cotton, cleaned and carded in other rooms, arrives as fluffy rovings which you feed into the mule. As it moves, you walk its length, sometimes 100 feet, tying broken threads with practiced speed. A single snapped thread can halt production, costing you a fine or a tongue lashing. The children, or piecers, crawl beneath, risking crushed fingers or worse if caught in the machinery. You've seen accidents: a scalp torn by a belt, a hand mangled by gears. Yet the mill doesn't stop. The overseer, often a former worker, risen through loyalty, pushes for efficiency, driven by the owner's demand for profit in a competitive market. Life outside the mill mirrors its grind. Your wages, perhaps 6 shillings a week, go to rent for the company-owned house and food from the truck shop, where goods are priced to keep you in debt. You've heard of the poor law workhouses, grim places for those who fall behind, and the fear of ending there keeps you working through exhaustion. The town is a maze of mills and slums, with open sewers and water pumps that often run dry. Disease, cholera, typhus lurks, fed by the crowded conditions. Your family shares a single privy with neighbors, and clean water is a luxury. Yet, community persists. Neighbors share scraps of food, and on rare evenings, you gather in a tavern, singing or swapping stories of better days. You've noticed stirrings of resistance. Secret meetings in back rooms discuss unions, though the combination acts make them illegal, and informers are everywhere. A strike last year in a nearby mill ended with workers blacklisted, unable to find work. Still, pamphlets circulate, speaking of fair wages and shorter hours, ideas that feel both dangerous and thrilling. The mill owners, backed by Parliament, hold power, but you sense a shift: more workers, more machines, more goods flooding markets. The cotton trade ties England to the world, but it traps you in its cogs. As you return to the mule, the machines clatter, drowning your thoughts. You wonder, could these whispered ideas of change take root, or will the mill's rhythm grind on, unbroken? The day ends as the mill's whistle sounds, releasing you. From the spinning room in 1850 Lancashire, your body aches, fingers raw from tying threads, eyes stinging from dust. You join the weary tide of workers streaming into the darkening streets, the mill's roar fading behind you. At home, your family gathers around a meager supper: potatoes, perhaps a bit of bacon, cooked over a small coal fire. The children, some working as piecers, are as tired as you, their faces smudged with grime. Sleep comes quickly on a shared mattress, but it's restless, broken by coughs from the dust lodged in your lungs. Tomorrow, the whistle will call you back, and the cycle will repeat. Despite the grind, resilience defines your life. You've learned to navigate the mill's dangers, watching for loose belts, teaching the children to move quickly yet carefully. Community sustains you. A neighbor shares a loaf when your wages fall short, or you pool money for a doctor when illness strikes. Sundays bring a rare pause, with a walk to church or a stolen hour in the tavern, where songs and stories lift your spirits. These small acts of defiance against the mill's monotonous sharing, singing, enduring knit the workers together, even as the overseers and owners loom large. Change, though slow, is stirring. The factory acts, passed in the 1830s and 1840s, limit children's hours and mandate some schooling, though enforcement is lax. You've heard of reformers visiting mills, documenting the lung diseases and accidents, pushing for shorter shifts. Strikes, though risky, are growing. Last month, a nearby mill stopped for a day, workers demanding better pay. The owners crushed it, but the spark remains. Unions, still illegal, meet in secret. And you've seen pamphlets calling for a 10-hour workday, a dream that feels distant but possible. The cotton mills, feeding Britain's global trade, rely on your labor, giving you a quiet power you're only beginning to grasp. History shows your toil was a turning point. The Industrial Revolution, built on the backs of mill workers like you, transformed economies, but also sowed the seeds of labor rights. By the late 19th century, unions gained ground, and laws improved conditions, driven by the collective will of workers who refused to be mere cogs. Your life, uncelebrated, was part of this shift, proving that even monotonous labor could fuel progress. What does your story teach us today? In an era of automation and gig work, your endless shifts echo in the repetitive tasks of modern workers, warehouse staff, delivery drivers, data processors. Your resilience, forged in the mill's clamor, reminds us that change often starts with ordinary people enduring extraordinary hardship. The rights we take for granted, weekends, safety laws, began with your quiet defiance, showing that even the most grueling routines can lay the foundation for a fairer world. The tedious drills of a Roman legionary's camp life, imagine you awaken. In the dim light of a leather tent, the year is 100 CE, and you're a legionary stationed at a Roman fort along the Rhine frontier. The air smells of damp wool, smoke from the campfires, and the faint temps of leather armor. Your contubernium, a squad of 8 men, stirs around you, rolling up their woolen blankets on the packed earth floor. As a soldier in the Roman Empire's legions, your life is defined by discipline and routine, a relentless cycle of drills and duties that maintain Rome's iron grip on its vast territories. You're not a hero of epic battles, but one of thousands whose daily grind keeps the empire's borders secure. Dawn breaks, and the buccina's sharp blast signals the start of the day. You pull on your tunic, segmented armor, larica, and heavy hobnailed sandals. The caligay that grip the ground during marches. Breakfast is quick porridge made from wheat or barley, sometimes with a scrap of salted pork, washed down with watered wine or posca, a sour vinegar drink. You eat in the tent, surrounded by your comrades' gear, shields, javelins, pila, and short swords, glady, meticulously maintained to avoid punishment. The fort, a rectangular grid of timber and stone, houses your cohort, one of 10 in a legion, of about 5,000 men. Beyond the ramparts and ditches lies the barbarian frontier, a constant but distant threat. Your morning is consumed by drill. Under the centurion's watchful eye, you march in formation across the parade ground, practicing the testudo, a shield wall tactic that mimics a turtle's shell. Each step must be precise, your heavy shield locked with your neighbor's, the weight pulling at your shoulders. You repeat maneuvers, endlessly advancing, retreating, hurling javelins at straw targets to ingrain muscle memory for battle. The centurion, a grizzled veteran, barks corrections, his vine staff ready to strike. Laggards. Physical training follows, running in full kit, digging practice trenches, or sparring with wooden swords, twice the weight of the real gladius to build strength. Sweat soaks your tunic, but rest is brief. Sloppiness invites extra duties or a beating. Beyond drills, camp life is a web of chores. You clean latrines, repair roads, or haul timber for the fort's palisade, all part of the legion's self-sufficiency. The camp has its own blacksmiths, bakers, and leather workers, but soldiers share the labor. You might stand guard at the Porta Praetoria, the main gate, scanning the horizon for hours, or patrol the ramparts, a monotonous task broken only by the occasional deer or trader. Meals are communal, cooked over open fires, and evenings bring equipment maintenance, polishing armor, sharpening blades, or mending sandals. The legion's discipline is strict. A lost tool could mean flogging, and desertion risks execution. The fort buzzes with routine, but you hear tales of distant campaigns. In Britannia or Parthia, though, your reality is this muddy outpost. You've sworn the sacramentum, an oath to the emperor, binding you for 25 years of service. Some legionaries dream of citizenship or land grants upon discharge, but many never survive that long. You wonder what lies beyond these drills, and how does this endless routine shape the empire's strength? Midday in the Roman fort, 100 CE, finds you sweating under the weight of your armor as you continue the relentless drills of a legionary's life. The sun glares down on the parade ground where you and your contubernium practice forming the orbis, a circular formation used when surrounded. Your shield, a curved rectangle of layered wood, feels heavier with each step, and the javelin in your other hand is slick with sweat. The centurion paces, his vine staff tapping his palm, ready to correct any misstep. His scrutiny, knowing a single error could mean extra hours, digging latrines, or cleaning the hypocaust system that heats the officers' quarters. The drills are monotonous, but they forge a unit that moves as one, a machine of muscle and discipline. Beyond the parade ground, camp life is a mosaic of tasks. You might be assigned to the fabrica, the workshop where blacksmiths repair glady, or forge new hobnails for your caligay. If not, you're hauling water from the nearby river, carefully boiled to avoid sickness, or stacking grain in the horia, the granary that feeds the legion. Own bathhouse, hospital, and shrine to Mars, where you offer a pinch of incense for victory, though battle feels distant. Every task, from sweeping barracks to mending leather tents, is governed by the legion's hierarchy. The optio, second to the centurion, checks your work, while the immune specialists, like carpenters or medics, enjoy lighter duties, a privilege you envy. Your meals are simple but hearty: bread, lentils, and occasionally cheese or dried fish, shared with your tent mates around a fire. You trade stories of homesome from Gaul, others from Hispania, though most of you are provincial recruits, not Roman-born. The legion is your family now, bound by shared hardship. Evenings bring more chores: oiling your armor to prevent rust, or sharpening your gladius, its blade inspected daily for flaws. The camp's rhythm is unrelenting, but it fosters camaraderie. You laugh over dice games or sing bawdy songs, though the centurion frowns on excess noise after dark. Discipline defines everything. The legion's strength lies in its order, from the precise layout of the fort streets in a grid, barracks, uniformed to the daily roll call, where absence means severe punishment. You've heard of mutinies, like one in Germania decades ago, but such rebellion is rare. The legion's code crushes dissent. Soldier hiding a jug of wine, forbidden in camp, or whispering about better pay. The empire's frontiers are stable, but rumors of raids by Germanic tribes reach the fort, reminding you why these drills matter. As you polish your shield by lamplight, you wonder, could these endless routines, so rigid and repetitive, hold the key to Rome's endurance? Or might they one day falter under an unseen threat? Night falls over the Roman fort, 100 CE, and you sit by the campfire, polishing your gladius. As the camp settles into quiet, the days, drills, and chores, marching, digging, guarding, have left you weary, but the legion's rhythm never fully stops. A distant owl hoots, and the glow of torches flickers along the ramparts where sentries stand watch. Your contubernarium shares a final meal, perhaps a stew of barley and vegetables. As you recount the day's small victories, a perfect formation, a centurion's rare nod of approval, these moments of camaraderie, forged through shared toil, make the grind bearable, binding you to men who've become brothers. The legion's discipline is your strength and your cage. You've mastered the testudo and orbis, your body honed by endless training, ready for a battle that may never come. The fort's routines, building roads, maintaining walls, drilling daily ensure readiness, but they also sustain the empire's infrastructure. The roads you repair carry legions and trade, linking this frontier to Rome's heart. Your labor, though mundane, supports the Pax Romana, the peace that holds the empire together. Yet, you've seen the cost: comrades lost to disease, injuries from training accidents, or the rare skirmish with raiders. The promise of citizenship or land after 25 years drives you. But many die before discharge, their names unrecorded. Resilience lies in the small acts of endurance. You've learned to mend your own sandals, barter extra rations, or carve a bone dice for games that lighten the evenings. The camp's community, soldiers, cooks, medics functions like a village, each role vital. You've joined in festivals for Jupiter or Mars, offering sacrifices at the camp altar, a reminder of Rome's gods watching over you. But whispers of unrest persist. a legionary grumbling about short rations, another hiding a forbidden amulet from his native gods. These hints of individuality clash with the legion's uniformity, hinting at tensions beneath the surface. History reveals your routines were Rome's backbone. The legion's discipline and infrastructure, roads, forts, supply lines held the empire for centuries. But by the 3rd century, cracks appeared. Overextension, economic strain, and barbarian invasions tested the system you upheld. Your drills, so tedious, trained soldiers who repelled threats. But the empire's reliance on rigid order made it brittle when adaptability was needed. Your life, one of countless, built Rome's glory. Yet its fall began in the quiet erosion of such routines. What does your story teach us today? In a world of systems offices, algorithms, supply chains, your life mirrors the unseen workers. Who maintain them? The legion's drills parallel modern routines that keep society running, from logistics to utilities. Your endurance shows that stability comes from collective effort, but also that rigidity can stifle change. The empire's fall warns us to balance order with flexibility, a lesson for systems teetering on the edge of disruption. The repetitive cycles of colonial American homesteaders. Picture yourself waking in a log cabin in the Massachusetts Bay Colony. 1680, as dawn creeps through the chinks in the wooden walls. The air is crisp, smelling of pine and the faint smoke from last night's fire. You're a homesteader, one of many who've carved a life from the New England wilderness, far from the ordered towns of England. Your home, a single room with a dirt floor and a stone hearth, shelters your family, perhaps a spouse and children, along with the tools and sparse furnishings of frontier life. Your days are a relentless cycle of labor, each task a step toward survival in a land both bountiful and unforgiving. You rise early, pulling on homespun woolen clothes and sturdy leather shoes, if you're lucky enough to have them. Breakfast is hasty cornmeal mush, perhaps with a drizzle of molasses, eaten by the fire. Your land, cleared by axe and sweat, is a patchwork of fields, a garden, and a small pasture, surrounded by dense forest. Your first task is feeding the livestock a few chickens, a pig, maybe a cow or oxen, kept in a rough pen. These animals are your lifeline, providing eggs, milk, and the muscle to plow fields. You check their feed, tossing corn or hay, and repair any fencing breached by wolves or wandering deer. The day's work centers on the fields. You grow Indian corn maize, learned from the Wampanoag, alongside beans, squash, and rye. Spring means planting, but now, in the growing season, you hoe weeds or scare birds with a rattle made of gourds. The soil is rocky, forcing you to pry out stones that surface each year, a task that blisters your hands. If you own oxen, you guide them to plow or haul timber. Otherwise, it's backbreaking work with a hoe or spade. Your wife and children help, tending the garden cabbages, turnips, herbs, or spinning flax into thread. Every chore, from sewing to mending, is shared. As survival demands all hands, the colony's laws and customs shape your life. You owe taxes, paid in grain or labor, to support the meeting house and militia. Sundays mean a long walk to church, where the minister preaches obedience and gratitude, though you quietly resent the fines for missing service. The community is tight-knit. Neighbors barter tools or help raise a barn, but disputes over land boundaries spark tension, settled by the town's selectmen. You've heard of raids by native tribes, like the recent conflicts with the Wampanoag during King Philip's War, and you keep a musket ready, though ammunition is scarce. Life is precarious. A failed crop or harsh winter could mean hunger, as you've seen in lean years, when families boiled shoe leather for broth. The forest holds game deer. Turkey butt hunting takes time from farming. As you pause, wiping sweat from your brow, you gaze at the endless trees beyond your fields. What does this land hold for your children? Will these daily toils secure a future, or will the wilderness reclaim what you've built? Midday sun filters through the trees, warming your Massachusetts homestead in 1680. You pause from hoeing weeds in the cornfield, your back aching from the labor. The fields are alive with the hum of insects and the rustle of leaves, but your focus is on the endless tasks that define a homesteader's life. You check the squash and beans, planted together with corn in the Three Sisters method taught by the Wampanoag, their vines intertwining to maximize yield. Your children scatter pebbles to deter birds, while your spouse churns butter or boils lye for soap made from ashes and animal fat. Every moment is filled, as idleness invites ruin in this frontier. Beyond farming, your homestead demands constant upkeep. You split logs for firewood, a necessity for the long New England winters, stacking them carefully to dry. The cabin's roof, thatched with reeds or bark, needs patching after storms, and you climb up with a bundle of straw to plug leaks. Tools, axes, sickles, or plows are sharpened on a whetstone, their edges dulled by rocky soil. If you're lucky, a neighbor lends a grindstone, repaid with a share of your harvest. Barter is common. Last week, you traded eggs for a basket of apples from a nearby orchard. These exchanges strengthen the community, though tensions flare when someone claims a deer killed on disputed land. The colony's rhythm shapes your days. You attend town meetings where men debate fence repairs or militia drills. Mandatory since King Philip's War, heightened fears of attack. Your musket, hung above the hearth, is cleaned weekly, its powder carefully rationed. The meeting house doubles as a church, and the Sabbath is strictly observed. Skipping it risks a fine or public shaming in the stocks. Yet faith offers solace, and you pray for good harvests or protection from smallpox, which swept through a nearby settlement last year. The minister's sermons speak of divine providence, but you wonder if God truly watches over this harsh land. Survival hinges on preparation. You preserve food for winter drying corn, smoking meat, or pickling vegetables in wooden barrels. The root cellar, dug beneath the cabin, stores turnips and potatoes, but mice and rot are constant threats. You've heard of families who starved when blizzards trapped them, their stores depleted. The forest provides resources: berries, maple sap, timber, but also dangers: bears, wolves, or getting lost in its depths. Your children learn to read tracks or identify edible plants, skills as vital as reading the Bible. As you mend a fence, hammering a wooden stake, you hear distant church bells calling a neighbor's funeral, a reminder of life's fragility. The community buries its dead together, sharing grief and labor. But whispers circulate of new settlements farther west, where land is plentiful but risks are greater. Could moving offer a better life? or would it bring new hardships? How does this cycle of toil, so tied to this patch of earth, shape the future of the colony you're building? Harvest time arrives on your Massachusetts homestead in 1680, and you stand in the fields, sickle in hand, cutting corn under a crisp autumn sky. The air smells of ripe grain and fallen leaves, and your family works beside you, gathering sheaves and loading them onto a cart. The yield is decent, thanks to careful tending and a mild summer, but a portion goes to the colony's taxes, paid in grain to the meeting house. What remains must last through winter, stored in the loft or cellar, where you hope it escapes weevils or damp. Your spouse preserves apples and pumpkins, while the children husk corn, their chatter a brief reprieve from the grind. The homestead cycle never truly pauses. Even as you harvest, you prepare for next season, repairing tools or clearing new land. Each tree felled a battle against the forest's encroachment. Winter looms, bringing snow that isolates your cabin, so you stockpile firewood and mend clothing, patching breeches with scraps of cloth. The community pulls together. A neighbor's barn raising draws every able hand, repaid with cider and mutual aid. Yet tensions persist. Disputes over grazing rights or stolen livestock lead to heated town meetings, where the selectmen's rulings are final but often grumbled over. Your resilience shines in small victories. You've learned to smoke fish, caught in the nearby stream, stretching meager supplies, or to barter a chicken for a neighbor's iron nails. The children, taught to read by lamplight, recite psalms, but also learn practical skills: tracking game, planting seeds, searing the family's survival. The colony's survival depends on this collective effort, each homestead a thread in a fragile tapestry. You've heard of abandoned settlements, reclaimed by wilderness when disease or raids struck, like during King Philip's War. Your musket, though rarely fired, is a reminder of that vulnerability. History shows your toil laid the foundation for a nation. The homesteaders' perseverance turned wilderness into farms, towns, and eventually a country. By the 18th century, these small plots grew into a network of communities, fueling independence movements as colonists demanded control over their labor's fruits. Your quiet work, uncelebrated, made that possible, proving that ordinary lives shape extraordinary outcomes. Yet the cost was high. Strained relations with native peoples whose lands you claimed sowed seeds of conflict that echoed for centuries. What does your story teach us today? In an age of convenience, your endless tasks, clearing, planting, enduring, remind us that progress is built on persistent effort. Modern challenges, from climate shifts to economic pressures, demand the same resilience you showed, adapting to a harsh environment with limited resources. Your life, tethered to the land, underscores the value of community and self-reliance. Lessons that resonate as we navigate an uncertain future, building on the unheralded work of those who came before. History reveals your routines were Rome's backbone. The legion's discipline and infrastructure, roads, forts, supply lines held the empire for centuries. But by the 3rd century, cracks appeared: overextension, economic strain, and barbarian invasions tested the system you upheld. Your drills, so tedious, trained soldiers who repelled threats. But the empire's reliance on rigid order made it brittle when adaptability was needed. Your life, one of countless, built Rome's glory. Yet, Its fall began in the quiet erosion of such routines. What does your story teach us today? In a world of systems offices, algorithms, supply chains, your life mirrors the unseen workers who maintain them. The legions drills parallel modern routines that keep society running, from logistics to utilities. Your endurance shows that stability comes from collective effort, but also that rigidity can stifle change. The empire's fall warns us to balance order with flexibility, a lesson for systems teetering on the edge of disruption. The repetitive cycles of colonial American homesteaders. Picture yourself waking in a log cabin in the Massachusetts Bay Colony, 1680, as dawn creeps through the chinks in the wooden walls. The air is crisp, smelling of pine and the faint smoke from last night's fire. You're a homesteader, one of many who've carved a life from the New England wilderness, far from the ordered towns of England. Your home, a single room with a dirt floor and a stone hearth, shelters your family perhaps, a spouse and children, along with the tools and sparse furnishings of frontier life. Your days are a relentless cycle of labor, each task a step toward survival in a land both bountiful and unforgiving. You rise early, pulling on homespun woolen clothes and sturdy leather shoes, if you're lucky enough to have them. Breakfast is hasty, cornmeal mush, perhaps with a drizzle of molasses, eaten by the fire. Your land, cleared by axe and sweat, is a patchwork of fields, a garden, and a small pasture surrounded by dense forest. Your first task is feeding the livestock, a few chickens, a pig, maybe a cow or oxen, kept in a rough pen. These animals are your lifeline, providing eggs, milk, and the muscle to plow fields. You check their feed, tossing corn or hay, and repair any fencing breached by wolves or wandering deer. The day's work centers on the fields. You grow Indian corn maize, learned from the Wampanoag, alongside beans, squash, and rye. Spring means planting, but now, in the growing season, you hoe weeds or scare birds with a rattle made of gourds. The soil is rocky, forcing you to pry out stones that surface each year, a task that blisters your hands. If you own oxen, you guide them to plow or haul timber. Otherwise, it's backbreaking work with a hoe or spade. Your wife and children help, tending the garden cabbages, turnips, herbs, or spinning flax into thread. Every chore, from sewing to mending, is shared. As survival demands all hands, the colony's laws and customs shape your life. You owe taxes, paid in grain or labor, to support the meeting house and militia. Sundays mean a long walk to church, where the minister preaches obedience and gratitude, though you quietly resent the fines for missing service. The community is tight-knit. Neighbors barter tools or help raise a barn, but disputes over land boundaries spark tension, settled by the town's selectmen. You've heard of raids by native tribes, like the recent conflicts with the Wampanoag during King Philip's War, and you keep a musket ready, though ammunition is scarce. Life is precarious. A failed crop or harsh winter could mean hunger, as you've seen in lean years when families boiled shoe leather for broth. The forest holds game deer. Turkey butt hunting takes time from farming. As you pause, wiping sweat from your brow, you gaze at the endless trees beyond your fields. What does this land hold for your children? Will these daily toils secure a future, or will the wilderness reclaim what you've built? midday sun filters through the trees, warming your Massachusetts homestead in 1680. You pause from hoeing weeds in the cornfield, your back aching from the labor. The fields are alive with the hum of insects and the rustle of leaves, but your focus is on the endless tasks that define a homesteader's life. You check the squash and beans planted together with corn in the Three Sisters method taught by the Wampanoag, their vines intertwining to maximize yield. Your children scatter pebbles to deter birds, while your spouse churns butter or boils lye for soap made from ashes and animal fat. Every moment is filled as idleness invites ruin in this frontier. Beyond farming, your homestead demands constant upkeep. You split logs for firewood, a necessity for the long New England winters. Stacking them carefully to dry, the cabin's roof, thatched with reeds or bark, needs patching after storms, and you climb up with a bundle of straw to plug leaks. Tools, axes, sickles, or plows are sharpened on a whetstone, their edges dulled by rocky soil. If you're lucky, a neighbor lends a grindstone, repaid with a share of your harvest. Barter is common. Last week, you traded eggs for a basket of apples from a nearby orchard. These exchanges strengthen the community, though tensions flare when someone claims a deer killed on disputed land. The colony's rhythm shapes your days. You attend town meetings where men debate fence repairs or militia drills, mandatory since King Philip's War heightened fears of attack. Your musket, hung above the hearth, is cleaned weekly, its powder carefully rationed. The meeting house doubles as a church, and the Sabbath is strictly observed. Skipping it risks a fine or public shaming in the stocks. Yet faith offers solace, and you pray for good harvests or protection from smallpox, which swept through a nearby settlement last year. The minister's sermons speak of divine providence, but you wonder if God truly watches over this harsh land. Survival hinges on preparation. You preserve food for winter drying corn, smoking meat, or pickling vegetables in wooden barrels. The root cellar, dug beneath the cabin, stores turnips and potatoes, but mice and rot are constant threats. You've heard of families who starved when blizzards trapped them, their stores depleted. The forest provides resources, berries, maple sap, timber butt, also dangers, bears, wolves, or getting lost in its depths. Your children learn to read tracks or identify edible plants, skills as vital as reading the Bible as you mend a fence. Hammering a wooden stake, you hear distant church bells calling a neighbor's funeral, a reminder of life's fragility. The community buries its dead together, sharing grief and labor. But whispers circulate of new settlements farther west, where land is plentiful but risks are greater. Could moving offer a better life, or would it bring new hardships? How does this cycle of toil, so tied to this patch of earth, shape the future of the colony you're building? Harvest time arrives on your Massachusetts homestead in 1680, and you stand in the fields, sickle in hand, cutting corn under a crisp autumn sky. The air smells of ripe grain and fallen leaves, and your family works beside you, gathering sheaves and loading them onto a cart. The yield is decent, thanks to careful tending and a mild summer, but a portion goes to the colony's taxes, paid in grain to the meeting house. What remains must last through winter, stored in the loft or cellar, where you hope it escapes weevils or damp. Your spouse preserves apples and pumpkins, while the children husk corn, their chatter a brief reprieve from the grind. The homestead's cycle never truly pauses. Even as you harvest, you prepare for next season, repairing tools or clearing new land. Each tree felled a battle against the forest's encroachment. Winter looms, bringing snow that isolates your cabin, so you stockpile firewood and mend clothing, patching breeches with scraps of cloth. The community pulls together, a neighbor's barn raising draws every able hand, repaid with cider and mutual aid. Yet tensions persist. Disputes over grazing rights or stolen livestock lead to heated town meetings, where the selectmen's rulings are final but often grumbled over. Your resilience shines in small victories. You've learned to smoke fish caught in the nearby stream, stretching meager supplies, or to barter a chicken for a neighbor's iron nails. The children, taught to read by lamplight, recite psalms, but also learn practical skills tracking game, planting seeds, ensuring the family's survival. The colony's survival depends on this collective effort, each homestead a thread in a fragile tapestry. You've heard of abandoned settlements, reclaimed by wilderness, when disease or raids struck, like during King Philip's War. Your musket, though rarely fired, is a reminder of that vulnerability. History shows your toil laid the foundation for a nation. The homesteader's perseverance turned wilderness into farms, towns, and eventually a country. By the 18th century, these small plots grew into a network of communities, fueling independence movements as colonists demanded control over their labor's fruits. Your quiet work, uncelebrated, made that possible, proving that ordinary lives shape extraordinary outcomes. Yet the cost was high. Strained relations with native peoples, whose lands you claimed, sowed seeds of conflict that echoed for centuries. What does your story teach us today? In an age of convenience, your endless tasks clearing, planting, enduring remind us that progress is built on persistent effort. Modern challenges, from climate shifts to economic pressures, demand the same resilience you showed, adapting to a harsh environment with limited resources. Your life, tethered to the land, underscores the value of community and self-reliance, lessons that resonate as we navigate an uncertain future, building on the unheralded work of those who came before. The bureaucratic tedium of Ottoman Empire. Clerks, imagine you awaken in a modest stone house in Istanbul, 1600, the heart of the Ottoman Empire. The morning call to prayer echoes from a nearby minaret, blending with the scent of wood smoke and bread baking in communal ovens. You are a scribe, a chatib, working in the sprawling bureaucracy of the Sublime Porte, the empire's administrative hub. Your home, a small room with a woven mat and a low table, holds your most prized possessions: an inkpot, reed pens, and stacks of paper, tools of your trade. Your life is a repetitive cycle of recording, copying, and filing, the unseen labor that keeps the empire's vast machinery running. You rise early, dressing in a simple robe and turban, suitable for a scribe of middling rank. Breakfast is flatbread, with olives and a sip of diluted yogurt, eaten quickly before you join the throng of clerks heading to the palace complex. The streets of Istanbul bustle with merchants, soldiers, and artisans, but your destination is the divan, the council chamber, where officials oversee the empire's affairs. Your workplace is a cramped office, its walls lined with shelves of ledgers, the air heavy with the smell of ink and dust. You sit cross-legged on a cushion, a low desk before you, and begin the day's work, transcribing tax records, drafting petitions, or copying imperial edicts. Your task is meticulous. Using a reed pen, you write in the elegant Arabic script of the Ottoman Chancery, recording land grants for provincial governors or trade permits for Venetian merchants. Each document must be flawless, as errors could delay a caravan or anger a bey. The empire spans 3 continents, from Hungary to Yemen, and your work ensures its order tracking grain shipments, soldiers' pay, or mosque endowments. You work under the Rais el-Kutab, the chief scribe, whose sharp eye catches any mistake. The divan hums with activity. Messengers deliver scrolls, while senior officials debate policy in the next room, their decisions becoming your paperwork. Life as a clerk is hierarchical. You're trained in a madrasa, where you mastered calligraphy and Islamic law, but your role is humble. Higher scribes, often ulema, with religious training, handle sensitive diplomatic letters, while you toil over routine accounts. Pay is modest, enough for bread, lentils, and rent, but you save for a better inkpot or a book of poetry. The city offers distractions bazaars, coffee houses, but your evenings are spent practicing script or studying to rise in rank. The empire's stability rests on your records, yet you're invisible, a cog in its vast system. Community binds you to others. You pray at the mosque, share meals with fellow clerks, and attend calligraphy classes where you refine your art. But the work is relentless, and errors bring reprimands or extra hours. You've heard of corrupt officials skimming taxes, their misdeeds recorded in the same ledgers you keep. As you dip your pen in ink, you wonder, how does this endless paperwork, so tedious yet vital, hold the empire together? And what happens when its precision falters? The midday sun streams through the latticed windows of your Istanbul office, 1,600, casting intricate shadows on the stacks of paper before you. As an Ottoman scribe, you continue your work in the Sublime Porte, the empire's administrative nerve center. Your reed pen scratches across the page, copying a feminine imperial decree granting tax exemptions to a distant village. The script must be perfect, each curve of the Arabic letters precise, as a single smudge could invalidate the document. Your fingers ache from hours of writing, and the air, thick with dust from old ledgers, makes you cough. Yet you press on, knowing the empire's order depends on your accuracy. Your role is to bridge the empire's vast reaches. You record tributes from provinces as far as Bosnia or Egypt, noting quantities of wheat, olive oil, or silver coins. These records feed the treasury, funding the janissaries or the sultan's palace. You also draft petitions for merchants seeking trade rights or peasants requesting relief from drought. Each document passes through layers of approval, stamped with the tugra, the sultan's calligraphic seal, which you've learned to recognize but never draw. The divan's senior scribes, often scholars of Islamic law, review your work, their corrections a humbling reminder of your place in the hierarchy. Life outside the office mirrors its rigidity. You break from midday prayer at a nearby mosque, joining clerks and shopkeepers in prostration, a moment of unity in a diverse city. Lunch is simple lentil soup, and bread, shared with colleagues who debate calligraphy styles or gossip about court intrigues. Your wages, paid in silver, ACI, cover necessities, but luxuries like sugar or silk are beyond reach. You live frugally, saving for a pilgrimage to Mecca or a dowry for your sister. The city's vibrancy, its bazaars brimming with spices, its ports alive with ships' contrasts with your monotonous tasks. Yet you take pride in your craft, a skill honed over years. The bureaucracy is not without flaws. You've seen clerks take bribes to expedite a merchant's permit or alter a tax record, their actions risking punishment if caught. Such corruption festers quietly, but you avoid it, fearing the sultan's justice, flogging, or exile for offenders. The empire's strength lies in its records, which track everything from ship repairs to mosque endowments. Yet, you hear of distant provinces where tax collectors overstep, sparking unrest. Last month, a petition from Anatolia complained of unfair levies, and you transcribed the Sultan's response, a routine task that hinted at deeper tensions as evening nears. You seal documents with wax, storing them in the archives, a labyrinth of scrolls and ledgers. The call to prayer sounds again, and you prepare to leave, your mind heavy with the day's minutiae. You've heard of reform's new accounting methods, stricter audits whispered in the divan's halls. Could these changes ease your burden, or will they add more layers to an already complex system? How does your quiet labor, buried in ink and paper, sustain an empire facing pressures from within and without? Evening settles over Istanbul in 1600, and you, an Ottoman scribe, finish your day's work in the sublime port, carefully stacking ledgers in the archives. The flickering oil lamp casts shadows on the walls, illuminating rows of scrolls that record the empire's lifeblood, taxes, trade, and decrees. Your hands are stained with ink, your eyes tired from deciphering faded scripts or drafting reports. You leave the office, joining the flow of clerks and artisans heading home, the city alive with the evening call to prayer. At home, you eat a modest supper of rice and chickpeas, sharing stories with your family about a merchant's petition or a colleague's flawless calligraphy. Your work, though tedious, is the empire's backbone. The ledgers you keep ensure taxes flow to Istanbul, funding wars against the Habsburgs or the construction of mosques like the Suleimani. Your records track the timber system, assigning land to soldiers for service, a system that binds the empire's military to its economy. Mistakes are costlier. Misrecorded tax could starve a garrison or delay a caravan. Yet, your role is invisible. The Sultan and viziers, whose names echo in history, rely on your precision but never know your name. You find pride in small victories, a perfectly drafted firman, or a promotion to a higher desk, closer to the divan's inner circle. Community sustains you. You gather with fellow scribes at the mosque or a coffee house where you discuss poetry or the Sultan's latest campaign. These bonds, forged over shared labor, ease the monotony, but the bureaucracy is strained. Corruption bribes for forged permits or inflated tax rolls SROD's trust, and you've seen clerks punished harshly. Rumors of rebellion in distant provinces, like the Jalali revolts, reach your ears, often sparked by overtaxation recorded in your own hand. The empire's vastness, once its strength, now stretches its administration thin, and you sense fragility. In the system you uphold, history shows your work was vital yet fleeting. The Ottoman bureaucracy, with its meticulous records, sustained an empire for centuries, enabling conquests and cultural flourishing. But by the 18th century, inefficiencies and corruption weakened it, as centralized control faltered against European advances and internal strife. Your ledgers, though lost to time, were the glue that held the empire together, proving that even mundane tasks shape history's course. What does your story teach us today? In an era of digital records and sprawling bureaucracies, your life mirrors the unseen workers, data entry clerks, administrators who keep systems running. Your meticulous labor, often uncelebrated, reminds us that precision in small tasks underpins grand structures, from empires to modern governments. Yet, your story also warns of fragility. When systems grow too rigid or corrupt, they crack under pressure. Your quiet endurance, like that of countless others, shows that the smallest cogs drive the greatest machines. A lesson for navigating our own complex world, the everyday labors of feudal Japanese rice farmers. You rise early, pulling on a hemp tunic and straw sandals. Breakfast is modest millet porridge or rice with pickled radish, eaten with chopsticks by the fire. The village, nestled in a valley, is surrounded by terraced paddies, their surfaces shimmering with water diverted from a nearby stream. Your first task is tending these paddies, where rice seedlings, planted weeks ago, need constant care. You wade into the muddy water, barefoot, checking for weeds that choke the young plants. Your hands, calloused from years of labor, pull them out carefully, ensuring the roots of the rice remain undisturbed. Rice is the heart of your world, not just food, but currency, paid as taxes to the daimyo. Your land, assigned by the village headman, is measured in koku, the amount of rice needed to feed one person for a year. You owe a portion, often half your harvest, to the Lord, collected by samurai overseers. The paddies require meticulous work, maintaining earthen dikes to hold water, clearing irrigation ditches clogged with silt, or repairing bamboo pipes that channel water. You use a wooden hoe or a foot-powered water wheel, its rhythmic creak a constant sound. Your wife and children help, transplanting seedlings or gathering straw for roofing. The village operates as a unit. You share tools with neighbors, take turns guarding crops from boars or birds, and contribute labor to repair the shrine to Inari, the rice god. The headman, a farmer like you but with authority, settles disputes over water rights or land boundaries. Festivals, like the spring planting ceremony, bring the community together with sake and prayers for a good harvest. But life is precarious. A flood or drought. You've heard of famines, like one a generation ago, when villages ate roots and bark to survive. As you work the paddy, mud up to your knees, you feel the weight of the daimyo's demands. The samurai, who live off your rice, rarely visit, but their presence looms. You've heard whispers of new laws from Edo, enforcing peace but tightening control over farmers. As the sun climbs, you pause, gazing at the green shoots swaying in the breeze. What happens if the harvest fails, or if the shogun's rules grow harsher? How does your toil, so vital to the land's order, shape the future of this rigid society? The midday sun warms the rice paddies of your Edo period village, 1600, as you continue your work as a Japanese rice farmer, knee-deep In water, you check the seedlings, ensuring they're submerged just enough to thrive. The paddies, carefully leveled to hold water, reflect the sky. But your focus is on the endless tasks, clearing weeds, repairing dikes, or adjusting the bamboo sluices that control irrigation. Your children chase sparrows from the fields, waving sticks, while your spouse pounds rice into flour or weaves straw into mats. Every task, no matter how small, is a thread in the fabric of survival, woven under the daimyo's distant but unyielding authority. The village is a web of shared labor. You join neighbors to dredge the irrigation stream, hauling mud in woven baskets, a task overseen by the headman to ensure fair water distribution. Disputes over water are common, especially in dry years, and the headman's rulings, backed by the daimyo samurai, are final. You also maintain the village shrine, sweeping its steps or offering rice to Inari for a bountiful harvest. These rituals bind the community, as do seasonal festivals where you share sake and dance to taiko drums, moments of joy in a life of toil. Barter is common. Your surplus rice might buy a neighbor's pottery or a fish from the river. The Tokugawa shogunate's laws shape your world. The alternate attendance system forces daimyo to travel to Edo, draining their wealth but ensuring loyalty, and your rice funds their journeys. Taxes are heavy, collected in koku and stored in the lord's granary, leaving you just enough to survive. Samurai inspectors visit annually, checking your fields and records, their katana a reminder of power. You've heard of punishments, fines, or forced labor for shortfalls or defiance. The village headman, though one of you, enforces these rules, balancing loyalty to the daimyo with fairness to farmers. Life is fragile. A typhoon could flood the paddies, or pests could devour the crop, as happened in a nearby village last year. You store rice in clay jars, guarding against rats, and dry fish or pickle vegetables for winter. The community helps in lean times, sharing food or labor, but famine looms as a constant threat. You teach your children to plant and pray, passing down knowledge of the land. Yet, you hear whispers of unrest. Farmers in another domain who hid rice to avoid taxes, risking severe punishment. The shogunate's peace has brought stability, but its rigidity stifles as you repair a dike. Sweat mixing with mud, you glance at the mountains beyond the village. The samurai live off your labor, their castles gleaming while your hut leaks. Could the shogunate's grip loosen, or will it tighten further? How does your daily grind, so essential to the daimyo's wealth, plant seeds for change in this tightly ordered world? Harvest season arrives in your Edo period village, 1600, and you stand in the rice paddies, sickle in hand, cutting stalks under a golden autumn sky. The air is crisp, filled with the scent of ripe grain and damp earth. Your family works beside you, bundling rice into sheaves, their hands quick despite the long hours. The yield is strong this year, a relief after months of labor, but the daimyo, share half or more, will go to his granary, collected by samurai who tally every koku. What remains must feed your family through winter. With a little to barter for salt or a new hoe, you store the rice in clay jars, praying it lasts. The cycle never truly stops. Even as you harvest, you prepare for next season, cleaning irrigation ditches or repairing tools. Winter brings quieter tasks, mending nets, weaving baskets, or carving wooden clogs. The village comes together for these chores, sharing labor and stories by the hearth. You teach your children to count koku or repair a dike, skills as vital as prayers to Inari. The community's strength is its mutual reliance. A neighbor shares fish when your stores run low, and you repay with rice. Yet, tensions lingered, disputes over water or stolen crops spark arguments, settled by the headman's stern word. Your resilience shines in small acts. You've learned to dry seaweed for flavor or stretch rice with wild greens during lean times. Festivals, like the autumn moon viewing, offer rare joy with sake and songs under lantern light. But the shogunate's control is tight. Taxes rise, and samurai inspections grow stricter, their records catching any shortfall. You've heard of farmers punished for hiding rice, their families stripped of land. The Tokugawa peace ensures order, but it binds you to the paddies. Your life dictated by the daimyo's needs. History shows your toil sustained Japan's feudal order. The rice you grew fed samurai, fueled trade, and stabilized the Edo periods. Long peace, but by the 19th century, heavy taxes and rigid hierarchies sparked peasant uprisings, weakening the shogunate and paving the way for the Meiji Restoration. Your labor, uncelebrated, was the foundation of this society, proving that even humble farmers shaped a nation's fate. What does your story teach us today? In a world of global supply chains, your life mirrors those who toil in fields or factories. Their work feeding nations, yet often unseen. Your endurance adapting to floods, taxes, and scarcity echoes in modern struggles to sustain communities amid economic or environmental strain. The shogunate's fall reminds us that rigid systems, built on the backs of workers like you, can crumble when pushed too far. Your quiet labor, like countless others, shows that the smallest efforts, repeated daily, build the world we inherit. The quiet duties in medieval European monasteries. Imagine you awaken in the pre-dawn chill of a stone cell. The year is 11 in a Benedictine monastery nestled in the hills of southern France. The air smells of damp stone and beeswax from candles burned during night prayers. You are a monk, vowed to a life of prayer, work, and obedience under the rule of Saint Benedict, your cell. A narrow room with a straw mattress and a single woolen blanket holds only a wooden cross and a psalter for reading. Your days are a cycle of structured tasks, prayer, labor, and study that shape the monastery's rhythm and sustain its spiritual and physical life. The bell tolls for matins, the first of 8 daily offices, and you rise, pulling on a coarse woolen habit and sandals. You join your brothers in the dark church, its stone arches lit by flickering candles, to chant psalms in Latin, your voice blending with theirs in a low, rhythmic hum. The air is cold, your breath visible, but the routine is comforting, a framework for devotion. After prayers, you eat a sparse breakfast bread and watered ale the refectory, where silence reigns, broken only by a monk reading scripture aloud. The rule demands simplicity, and meals reflect this. With meat, rare, and vegetables from the monastery's garden, your morning is filled with labor, or ora, et labor, prayer, and work. You might tend the garden, growing cabbages, leeks, and herbs for the kitchen, or work in the fields, harvesting barley shared with local peasants. The monastery is self-sufficient with its own bakery, brewery, and scriptorium. Today, you're assigned to the herbarium, drying medicinal plants like chamomile or mint, used to treat sick monks or villagers who seek the monastery's care. The work is repetitive, sorting leaves, grinding roots, but deliberate, each task an offering to God. Your hands, rough from toil, move with care, mindful of the rules, call to humility. The monastery is a community bound by vows. You live with dozens of monks, from novices to the abbot, who enforces discipline. The rule governs everything: when to pray, eat, or sleep. You attend chapter meetings, where the abbot reads from the rule and assigns tasks or penances for infractions, like speaking out of turn. The monastery also serves the nearby village, offering alms or healing, but you're cloistered, rarely leaving the walls. Sundays bring longer prayers, and feast days, like St. Benedict's, offer rare treats, honey or wine. Life is austere, but purposeful. You've heard of the world beyond wars, famines, or the Crusades, but your focus is inward, on salvation through routine. Yet, the monastery isn't immune to strain. A poor harvest could shrink the stores, and whispers of reform, like the new Cistercian order, reach your ears. As you knead dough in the bakery, the scent of baking bread rising, you wonder, how does this quiet life, so removed from the world, sustain both soul and society? And what happens if its balance falters? Midday in the Benedictine monastery finds you in the scriptorium, your quill scratching across parchment as you copy a manuscript of St. Augustine's writings. The room is quiet, save for the rustle of pages and the soft coughs of fellow monks bent over their desks. Sunlight filters through narrow windows, illuminating dust motes and the careful lines of your Latin script. As a monk in southern France, your life blends prayer and labor. And today's task: copying texts for the monastery's libraries, a sacred duty, preserving knowledge for future generations. Your fingers, stained with ink, move slowly to avoid errors, as a single mistake could ruin hours of work. The monastery's rhythm is unrelenting. After lauds and mass, you return to labor, perhaps tending the apiary, where bees provide honey and wax for candles. The hives, made of straw, hum with activity, and you check them carefully, avoiding stings. Other monks work in the brewery, making ale or the laundry, washing habits in cold water. Every task, from pruning fruit trees to grinding grain, follows the rule of Saint Benedict, which assigns work to strengthen both body and soul. You break for sext, the midday office, chanting psalms in the church, your voice hoarse but steady. Then eat a simple lunch: lentil stew and bread in silence. A reader reciting from the Gospels. Community is the monastery's heart, with brothers of varied backgrounds, some former peasants, others minor nobles, all bound by vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience. The abbot, a stern but fair leader, oversees daily life, while the prior assigns tasks. You share everything, from meals to prayers, and help novices learn the psalter or proper chant. The monastery also supports the village, giving surplus food to the poor or treating the sick with herbal remedies. Yet, tensions exist. A monk caught napping during prayers faces penance, like fasting or extra chores, and whispers of favoritism among the abbot's inner circle stir unease. The outside world intrudes subtly. The monastery owns land, worked by local peasants who pay rent in grain, and you record these transactions in ledgers. News of distant events, Viking raids, or the First Crusade filters through pilgrims or merchants, but your focus remains inward. Still, resources are tight. A harsh winter could deplete the granary, forcing the monastery to buy grain at high cost. You've heard of other houses adopting stricter reforms, like the Cistercians, who shun luxury and emphasize manual labor. Such ideas spark debate in chapter meetings, where monks discuss the rule's true path. As you clean your quill, the bell rings for none, another office of prayer. The day's work feels endless, yet each task, writing, gardening, praying, builds the monastery's legacy. But what happens if the world's chaos, war, famine, or reformed disrupts this ordered life? How does your quiet toil, so removed, yet so vital, shape the faith and knowledge of a turbulent age? Evening falls over the Benedictine monastery in 1100, and you light candles in the church for vespers. The air heavy with incense as you chant psalms with your brothers. The day's tasks, copying manuscripts, tending herbs, baking bread, are done, and you sit in the refectory for a supper of barley soup and apples, eaten in silence as a monk reads from the lives of the saints. Your body aches from labor, your mind weary from Latin texts, but the rule of Saint Benedict offers structure, guiding you toward sleep in your cold cell. The monastery, a haven of order, hums with the quiet rhythm of devotion. Your life is one of resilience through routine. You've learned to grind ink from oak galls, tend sick villagers with herbal salves, or repair the church's leaking roof. These skills, honed over years, sustain the monastery's self-sufficiency. Community binds you. You share laughter with novices during rare moments in the cloister, or help a struggling brother memorize a psalm. The monastery's charity, feeding the poor, healing the sick, extends its influence, earning gratitude from the village. Yet, discipline is strict. A forgotten prayer or spilled ink brings penance, like scrubbing floors or missing a meal. The monastery's role transcends its walls. Your copied manuscripts preserve theology and classical knowledge, later fueling the Renaissance. The fields you till feed not just monks but local peasants, and the herbal remedies you prepare save lives in an age of plague. But challenges loom. A failed harvest could strain the granary, and tensions with the local lord, who covets the monastery's land, simmer. You've heard of reform movements, like the Cistercians, urging a return to austere simplicity, challenging your abbey's wealth. These debates, aired in chapter meetings, hint at a shifting world. History shows your quiet duties were vital. Monasteries, like yours, were medieval Europe's intellectual and economic hubs, preserving texts through the Dark Ages and stabilizing rural life. But by the 13th century, corruption and secular pressures weakened some houses, while reforms reshaped others. Your labor, uncelebrated, laid the groundwork for cultural revival, proving that small, repetitive acts could ripple across centuries. What does your story teach us today? In a world of constant noise, your cloistered life mirrors those who maintain society's foundations: librarians, caretakers, archivists, through steady, unseen work. Your devotion to routine, despite isolation, shows the power of discipline in creating lasting impact. Yet, the monastery's struggles warn that even sacred systems can stagnate without adaptation. Your quiet toil, blending faith and labor, reminds us that the smallest acts, done with purpose, can preserve knowledge and community for generations. The ritualistic crafts of Mayan stoneworker, Simagin you awaken at dawn in a Mayan city, around 700 CE, in the lush jungles of the Yucatan. The air is humid, thick with the scent of earth and flowering ceiba trees, as the distant calls of howler monkeys echo. You are a stoneworker, an artisan crafting limestone blocks for the temples and palaces of your city. Perhaps Tikal or Palenque, your home, a thatched hut with adobe walls, sits on the city's edge, shared with your family and tools obsidian chisels, flint hammers, and polishing stones. Your life is a cycle of repetitive labor, blending skill and ritual to honor the gods and rulers who define your world. You rise early, dressing in a cotton loincloth and chewing maize tortillas with chili for breakfast, eaten near a small hearth. The city hums with activity priests chanting, farmers tending milpas, nobles planning ceremonies. Your work begins at the quarry, a short walk away, where limestone slabs are cut from the earth. Using a wooden mallet and obsidian chisel, you chip away at the stone, shaping blocks for a new temple pyramid. The work is precise. Each block must fit perfectly, without mortar, to withstand time and please the gods. Sweat drips as you carve, the sun climbing. But you pause to offer copal incense to Chak the rain god for strength. Your craft is sacred. The stones you shape form steely carved monuments, tripped kings or deities, or altars for blood offerings. Each piece requires days of labor, from rough cutting to polishing with river sand. You work under the direction of a master artisan who sketches designs with charcoal, often glyphs or scenes of sacrifice. Your tools, handcrafted and brittle, break often, forcing you to nap new ones from obsidian traded from distant highlands. The city depends on your work. Temples and ball courts, built for rituals, cement the king's divine power and the community's bond to the cosmos. The Mayan world is hierarchical. You're respected as a skilled artisan, but below, nobles and priests. Your labor supports the city's elite, who commission grand structures, yet you receive maize, cacao beans, or cloth as payment, bartered in the bustling market. The community thrives on shared effort. Farmers provide food, weavers make your clothes, and you build the sacred spaces. Festivals, like those honoring the maize god, unite the city with music and dance. But your role is to prepare the stone altars, a quiet but vital task. Life is precarious. A drought could starve the city, as you've seen in lean years, when maize stores dwindled. The jungle holds dangers. Jaguars, snakes, sand quarrying, risks injury from falling rocks. As you smooth a stone block, its surface gleaming, you wonder, how does your craft, so tied to the gods and kings, ensure the city's survival? What happens if the rains fail or the ruler's demands grow too heavy? Midday in the Mayan city, 700 CE, finds you in the quarry, chiseling limestone under the relentless Yucatan sun. As a stoneworker, your task is to shape blocks for a new palace, each one measured to fit precisely in the corbelled arches that define Mayan architecture. The rhythmic tap of your flint hammer echoes, blending with the calls of macaws overhead. Your hands, calloused and dusted with limestone, work carefully. A misstrike could crack the stone, wasting days of effort. You pause to drink water from a gourd and offer a prayer to its Omna, the Creator God, for precision. Your work as much a ritual as the priest's ceremonies. Your labor is communal. You work alongside other artisans, some carving intricate reliefs of jaguars or feathered serpents, others hauling stones to the city center with ropes and wooden rollers. The master artisan oversees, correcting your angles or approving a finished block. Your tools, obsidian blades, flint drills, are fragile, requiring constant sharpening or replacement. A skill you've honed since apprenticeship. The quarry is alive with activity, but dangers lurk. A loose boulder could crush a limb, and you've seen men carried off, bleeding after accidents. Still, the work continues, driven by the king's demand for grander temples. The city's life revolves around your craft. The structures you build, pyramids, observatories, ball courts, host rituals that align the Maya with the cosmos, from bloodletting to ball games honoring the gods. Your stele, carved with glyphs, record the king's victories or astronomical events like eclipses, tying the city to the divine order. You barter your labor for maize, pottery, or jade beads in the market, where vendors shout offers for quetzal feathers or cacao. The community depends on interdependence. Farmers feed you, weavers clothe you, and your stones give form to their beliefs. Yet the hierarchy is stark. The king and priests, adorned in jade and feathers, live in the palaces you build, while your family shares a single-room hut. You attend festivals like the solstice rites, where the king performs sacrifices atop your pyramids, but you stand among the crowd, not the elite. Droughts or crop failures, common in this fickle climate, threaten all. Last year, hunger forced some to eat bitter roots. Whispers of rival cities, like Kalakmal, raiding for captives, add tension, though your city's walls, built by your hands, offer protection as you polish a stone with sand. The jungle's heat pressing down, you feel the weight of your role. The gods demand perfection, the king demands speed, and your family needs food. Could a failed harvest or enemy attack unravel this delicate balance? How does your craft, so rooted in ritual and labor, hold the city together in a world where gods and nature are unpredictable? The sun sets over the Mayan city, 700 CE, casting a golden glow on the pyramids you've helped build. As a stoneworker, you finish carving a stela, its glyphs depicting the king's latest conquest. The jungle hums with cicadas, and you clean your obsidian tools, storing them in your hut. Supper awaits: maize, tamales, and beans, shared with your family around a fire. Your hands scarred from years of chiseling ache, but the day's work feels sacred, each stone a prayer to the gods. Sleep comes quickly on a woven mat, though dreams of falling rocks or failed rains linger. Your resilience defines your life. You've mastered carving intricate reliefs, aligning stones without mortar, and crafting tools from brittle obsidian. The community relies on your skill. The temples you build host rituals that appease the gods, ensuring rain and harvests. You trade surplus work props, a carved amulet for cacao or cloth, strengthening ties with neighbors. Festivals, like the equinox, when shadows align on your pyramids, unite the city in awe with drums and dances. Yet your role is humble. Priests and nobles, living in your structures, hold power, while you labor in their shadow. The city's survival hinges on balance. Your work supports the king's divine claim, but drought or war could disrupt it. Last year's scarce rains left Milpas barren, forcing families to barter tools for food. Rival cities' raids, seeking captives for sacrifice, keep the militia vigilant, and you've carved stones for defensive walls. Whispers of discontent, farmers taxed too heavily, or artisans pushed beyond endurance, circulate in the market. The gods, appeased by blood and stone, seem distant when hunger strikes, and you wonder if their favor can falter. History shows your craft shaped the Maya's golden age. The temples and stelae you built, enduring centuries, carried their cosmology and history, later decoded by scholars. But by 900 CE, many cities, including yours, collapsed, droughts, overpopulation, or warfare, breaking the delicate balance. Your labor, though uncelebrated, created a civilization's legacy, proving that artistry and devotion could defy time, even if the cities fell. What does your story teach us today? In an era of mass production, your meticulous craft mirrors artisans, coders, builders, restorers who create lasting works through patient skill. Your life, tied to ritual and community, shows how shared purpose sustains societies. Yet, the Maya's collapse warns of fragility when resources or faith run thin. Your stones, standing long after your name faded, remind us that humble labor, infused with meaning, builds legacies that outlast empires. A lesson for crafting our own enduring contributions. The mundane household tasks of Viking settlers. Imagine yourself stepping into the dim, smoky interior of a Viking longhouse, nestled along the rugged fjords of 9th century Norway. The air is thick with the scent of peat fires and drying fish, and the low hum of daily routines fills the space like a constant, unchanging rhythm. As a settler in this harsh northern world, your days revolve around the unremarkable yet essential tasks that keep your household afloat amid the unpredictable elements. These chores, far from the tales of raiding voyages and heroic sagas, form the backbone of Viking life, quiet, repetitive labors that demand patience and ingenuity from everyone. From the sturdy farmer to the resourceful housewife, you begin your morning with the simple act of tending the fire, a task that seems endlessly monotonous but is vital for survival. The hearth, centrally placed in the longhouse, serves as the heart of the home, providing warmth, light, and a means to cook. You'd gather dried moss, twigs, and precious wood scarce in treeless regions like Iceland, where settlers often rely on driftwood or imported timber from Scandinavia. Striking flint against steel, you'd coax embers into life, careful not to waste fuel in a land where winters stretch long and unforgiving. This fire isn't just for comfort, it's where you'd boil water in iron cauldrons, simmering stews of barley, turnips, and salted meat from the previous season's slaughter. Cooking was a drawn-out affair, with grains soaked overnight to soften them, and herbs like dill or wild garlic added sparingly to ward off the blandness of preserved foods. You'd stir the pot for hours, ensuring nothing scorched on the open flame, all while the smoke curled up through the turf roof, stinging your eyes and embedding itself in your woolen clothes. As the day unfolds, you'd turn to the endless cycle of textile work, a cornerstone of household economy. Viking women, and often men during quieter seasons, spent countless hours at the loom, weaving wool from sheep that grazed on sparse pastures. Picture yourself carding raw fleece with combs, made from antler or bone, pulling out tangles and aligning fibers into ropes, then spinning it into yarn using a drop spindle-weighted stick twirled by hand, hour after hour, until your fingers ached from the repetitive motion. The upright, warp-weighted loom dominated one corner of the longhouse, its stones clinking softly as you passed the weft through the threads. Fabrics weren't just for clothing. They made sails for ships, blankets for beds, and even currency in trade. Dyes from plants like woad for blue or madder for red added subtle variety. But the process involved boiling vats of urine-soaked cloth to set the colors, a foul-smelling chore that permeated the air. Farming tasks interweave with these indoor duties, pulling you outside to the small plots of arable land. In summer, you'd hoe fields of oats or rye, weeding by hand under the midnight sun, while in autumn, the harvest meant scything crops with iron sickles and threshing them on the barn floor. Livestock care was perpetual, milking cows or goats twice daily, churning butter in wooden vessels by plunging a dasher up and down until your arms burned, and mucking out stalls filled with manure that you'd later spread as fertilizer. These animals, pigs rooting in the underbrush, chickens pecking at scraps, provided eggs, meat, and hides, but required constant vigilance against predators like foxes or the threat of famine during lean years. Child rearing blended seamlessly into this routine, with older siblings teaching the young to churn, weave, or mend fishing nets woven from horsehair. Tools were handmade or repaired on site, sharpening knives on whetstones, forging nails at a small anvil, or carving wooden utensils from birch. Water fetching from nearby streams involved lugging heavy buckets, often through mud or snow, a back errand repeated multiple times a day. Yet, amid this tedium, subtle innovations emerged from necessity. Vikings developed efficient storage methods, like burying butter in bogs to preserve it, or smoking fish in dedicated huts to last through winter. Social bonds strengthened through shared labor. Neighbors might gather for communal tasks like roof thatching with sod, layering it thick to insulate against the cold. As the sun dips low, you reflect on how these uncelebrated efforts sustained entire communities, allowing the occasional seafaring adventure. But what happens when seasons shift, bringing new challenges to this delicate balance of chores? How did settlers adapt when resources dwindled or illness struck the household? You're back in the Viking longhouse, where the relentless rhythm of daily tasks shifts with the seasons, each bringing its own set of challenges to the settler's unyielding routine. The longhouse, with its earthen walls and smoky air, is your sanctuary, but it's also a battleground against the elements. As autumn fades into winter, you face the critical task of preparing for months when fields lie fallow and the fjords freeze over. The mundane chores of summer tending crops, weaving, and milking livestock morph into a desperate scramble to stockpile resources, preserve food, and maintain warmth in a world where survival hinges on foresight and meticulous labor. Food preservation dominates your days as the days shorten. You'd gut and clean fish caught in summer, hanging them on wooden racks to dry in the salty coastal winds, creating screed, a rock-hard cod that could last years. Meat from slaughtered animals, often the weaker ones, culled to save fodder, was salted or smoked in small outbuildings, where you'd stoke fires with damp wood to produce thick, preserving smoke. Every scrap mattered. Bones were boiled for broth, fat rendered into tallow for candles or soap. You'd churn butter in massive quantities, packing it into wooden barrels, or, in treeless regions like Iceland, burying it in bogs where the cold, acidic soil acted as a natural preservative. These tasks were tedious, requiring hours of repetitive labor scaling fish, stirring vats, or kneading dough for flatbreads baked on hot stones. Yet each step was a calculated act of survival, ensuring your family wouldn't starve when blizzards sealed you indoors. Winter also intensified indoor work. With fields buried under snow, you'd turn to repairing tools or crafting new ones. Using a small forge, you'd hammer iron nails or sharpen scythes, the clang of metal echoing in the longhouse. Textile production ramped up as there was little else to do in the dim light. You'd spin wool by firelight, the spindle twirling endlessly, or weave intricate patterns into cloth, a skill passed down through generations. These fabrics weren't just practical. They were trade goods, bartered for iron, grain, or rare luxuries like glass beads. Women, often the backbone of this economy, managed these tasks while teaching children to mend nets or carve bone needles, embedding resilience into the next generation. The livestock, now confined to stalls, demanded constant attention. You'd haul fodder hay or dried seaweed to feed cows and goats, rationing carefully to stretch supplies. Milking continued, though yields dropped as animals weakened. Manure piled up, and you'd shovel it into heaps for spring planting, a smelly but necessary chore. Water fetching grew perilous as streams iced over, forcing you to hack through with axes or melt snow in cauldrons. The cold seeped into everything, and maintaining the hearth fire became an obsession. You'd ration wood or peat, knowing a single night without heat could spell disaster. Social dynamics shifted too. Communal tasks, like brewing ale for winter gatherings, brought neighbors together, fostering alliances. Ale making was arduous grinding barley, fermenting it in vats, and straining it through cloth, but it strengthened bonds in isolated settlements. Yet, tensions arose when resources dwindled. A failed harvest or a sick cow could strain the household, forcing tough choices. Slaughter an animal early or trade precious cloth for grain. These adaptations reveal the ingenuity hidden in monotony, but they also expose vulnerabilities. What happened when a longhouse faced a crisis of fire gone out, a disease among the livestock, or a winter that stretched too long? How did these settlers, bound by routine, find ways to endure the unexpected? You stand once more in the Viking longhouse, where the weight of winter's trials tests the endurance of every settler. The mundane tasks, fire tending, weaving, preserving food have carried you through months of darkness. But survival now depends on how well you've mastered these routines and adapted to crises. The longhouse, a microcosm of Viking resilience, is both a refuge and a proving ground, where the smallest misstep could unravel the delicate balance of life. As spring looms, you reflect on how these repetitive labors not only sustained your family but also shaped a society that thrived against the odds. Crises were inevitable. A hearth fire might die during a blizzard, plunging the longhouse into freezing darkness. You'd scramble to restart it, using precious dry tinder or borrowing embers from a neighbor, a humbling act that reinforced community ties. Disease among livestock was another threat. A sick cow could decimate milk and meat supplies. You'd isolate the animal, praying it wasn't contagious, while brewing herbal remedies from dried nettles or yarrow, knowledge gleaned from elders. Starvation loomed when stores ran low. In such times, you'd forage for seaweed or lichens, boiling them into a gritty porridge, or trade woven cloth for fish at a steep cost. These moments of scarcity forced innovation. Some settlers crafted fishbone needles to mend nets more efficiently, while others devised snares for seabirds, adding meager protein to the diet. The longhouse itself required constant upkeep. Leaks in the turf roof caused by heavy snow meant hours of patching with sod or straw. Often in freezing rain, you'd climb atop the roof, hands numb to secure the layers, knowing a single breach could flood the interior. Inside, you'd scrub wooden benches and floors to prevent mold, a task as tedious as it was critical. These efforts, though dull, were acts of defiance against nature's harshness, ensuring the longhouse remained a livable space. As spring arrived, the pace shifted. You'd sow barley and oats in thawed fields, using wooden plows pulled by oxen, or your own strength. The return of migratory birds signaled time to collect eggs, a delicate task to supplement meals. The loom, ever present, churned out lighter fabrics for summer, while you repaired fishing nets for the season's bounty. These cycles of labor, though repetitive, fostered a deep connection to the land and community. Neighbors shared seeds or tools, and communal feasts celebrated the end of winter, with ale and sagas recounting not raids but survival. The legacy of these mundane tasks stretches far beyond the longhouse. The Vikings' knack for preservation, drying fish, burying butter laid the groundwork for trade networks that spanned continents. As their durable goods reached markets in Byzantium, their textile skills produced sails that powered exploration from Greenland to Vinland. Even their communal labor model influenced later Scandinavian societies, emphasizing collective resilience over individual glory. Reflecting on this, you see how the Vikings' quiet persistence mirrors modern challenges. Their ability to find purpose in routine offers a lesson. Progress often lies in the uncelebrated details, maintaining a home, preserving resources, adapting to scarcity. These settlers, through their monotonous yet vital chores, built a foundation for survival that echoes in today's sustainable practices. But what other forgotten labors shaped distant corners of history? How did the next group of unsung workers, perhaps along the Silk Road, endure their own endless routines? The long, uneventful journeys of Silk Road caravan guards. Imagine yourself astride a sway-backed camel, trudging across the vast Taklamakan desert in the 8th century, a guard in a Silk Road caravan. The sun beats down, baking the sand into a shimmering haze, while your caravan, a line of merchants, pack animals, and fellow guard stretches like a weary snake toward the horizon. Your role is not one of glory, but of quiet vigilance, a life defined by monotonous days and nights that blur into weeks. The Silk Road, stretching from Chang'an in China to Samarkand in Central Asia, is a lifeline of trade. carrying silk, spices, and ideas. Yet, for you, a caravan guard, it's a world of repetitive tasks, endless walking, and the constant weight of responsibility to protect the goods and lives entrusted to you. Your day begins before dawn, rousing the camels from their kneeling rest. You check their loads, bales of silk, sacks of pepper, or fragile porcelain, ensuring ropes are tight and nothing shifts during the trek. Camels are stubborn beasts, and you spend hours coaxing them to stand, adjusting their wooden saddles, and cleaning sand from their matted fur. Water is scarce, so you ration it carefully, filling goatskin bags from an oasis well, each drop measured to sustain both man and animal until the next watering hole, perhaps days away. The merchants, often wealthy Sogdians or Uyghurs, rely on you to scout the path, watching for shifting dunes or signs of bandits. Though attacks are rare in this desolate stretch, walking consumes most of your time. You pace alongside the caravan, your leather boots sinking into the sand, the rhythm of your steps matching the camel's grumbling plod. The trail is unmarked, guided only by the stars or the faint tracks of prior caravans. You carry a curved sword and a short bow, but they're seldom used. Your real weapon is endurance. Meals are simple: flatbread baked on hot stones, dried apricot. Daily maintenance is relentless. Navigation requires constant attention. You consult with the caravan leader, using a rudimentary astrolabe to confirm your course by the stars. Disputes among the merchants over trade deals or water shares require your mediation, a tedious task that tests your patience. Yet these routines forge a quiet camaraderie. You share stories with other guards, often nomadic Turks or Persians, swapping tales of distant cities like Bukhara or the monasteries of Dunhuang. The monotony is deceptive. Days blend into one another, but the stakes are high. A single misstep, missing a water source, or misreading the stars could strand the caravan. As you squint at the horizon, you wonder what challenges lie beyond the next oasis. How does this endless march test the limits of human endurance? You're still trudging along the Silk Road, the Taklamakan's dunes stretching endlessly before you. As a caravan guard, your life is a study in patience, where the weight of waiting and watching defines your existence. The caravan moves slowly, covering perhaps 15 miles a day, and the unchanging landscape, sand, sky, and the occasional scrubby tamarisk dulls your senses. Yet, beneath this monotony lies a constant tension. Your duty is to anticipate threats that rarely materialize, to maintain order in a group of weary travelers, and to ensure the caravan reaches the next trading post intact. These tasks, though repetitive, demand a sharp mind and a steady hand. Your primary role is vigilance. By day, you scan the horizon for dust clouds that might signal raiders or a sandstorm. At night, you perch on a dune during your watch, eyes straining for movement in the starlit dark. The threat of bandits is ever present, but often exaggerated. Most days pass without incident, leaving you to battle boredom rather than foes. To stay alert, you chew bitter cot leaves, a habit picked up from Sogdian traders, their mild stimulant keeping fatigue at bay. You also maintain the caravan's rhythm, ensuring the camels keep pace and the merchants don't stray. Herding stragglers, whether human or animal, is a daily chore. Is calming tempers when disputes erupt over load distribution or profits. Logistics consume much of your time. You inspect the camel's loads, retying knots loosened by the desert's jolting terrain. Water skins are checked for leaks, a task requiring you to sniff for the telltale scent of damp leather. When an oasis is reached, you oversee the refilling process, rationing water to prevent waste. Food preparation is another grind. You knead dough for cook it on flat stones heated by dung fires, and portion out dried fruits or yogurt curds. These meals, eaten in silence around a fire, are a brief respite, though you must clean the cooking gear afterward, scrubbing sand from iron pots. Maintenance extends to your own gear. You sharpen your sword on a whetstone, oil your bowstring with animal fat, and mend your cloak with coarse thread. These tasks, done by firelight, are meditative but tiring. You also learn from the caravans diversity merchants teach you, phrases in Tocharian or Parthian, skills that aid in bartering at trading posts. The Silk Road is a cultural crossroads, and you absorb fragments of Buddhist chants or Zoroastrian prayers. Though your focus remains on practical survival, the psychological toll of this routine is subtle but real. Isolation gnaws at you as days pass with little conversation beyond gruff orders. The caravans hierarchy merchants above guards. Guards above camel drivers breeds resentment, and you mediate petty squabbles to keep peace. Yet, these interactions build trust, as shared hardship binds you to your companions. As you near an oasis town, the promise of rest is tempered by new concerns. Trading posts bring fresh supplies, but also rumors of plague or shifting trade routes. What happens when the caravan reaches Dunhuang or Kashgar? How do these fleeting moments of respite reshape the guard's relentless routine? You've reached the outskirts of a Silk Road trading post, perhaps Dunhuang, where the caravan's long journey pauses. As a guard, your role in these bustling hubs is less about action and more about preparation, ensuring the caravan departs as smoothly as it arrived. The endless march through the desert has honed your resilience, but here, in the shadow of mud brick walls and bustling markets, you see the broader impact of your mundane labors. The repetitive tasks watching, walking, repairing have not only kept the caravan safe, but also sustained a network that binds empires, carrying goods and ideas across continents. At the trading post, your duties shift slightly, but remain tedious. You oversee the unloading of goods, checking bales of silk for damage, and guarding them against petty thieves in crowded bazaars. Merchants haggle over prices, exchanging Chinese paper for Persian glassware or Indian saffron, while you ensure no disputes turn violent. You barter your own small earnings, perhaps a few copper coins, for necessities like fresh bread or a new water skin. Restocking is a meticulous process. You fill barrels with water, inspect new camels for signs of lameness, and haggle for fodder like dried lucerne. These tasks, though routine, are critical, as a poorly provisioned caravan could falter on the next leg. The trading post offers rare moments of relief. You might visit a tea house, sipping fermented mare's milk with other guards, swapping stories of sandstorms or near misses with bandits. These interactions reveal the Silk Road's true scope. Your caravan is one of many, each guarded by men like you, whose uncelebrated work keeps trade alive. You learn of distant events, Tangisty rebellions, or Sogdian uprisings that could disrupt routes, forcing you to adapt plans. Yet, even here, your routine persists, mending gear, cleaning weapons, and preparing for the next departure. Crises test your endurance. A sudden illness among the merchants might delay the caravan, forcing you to ration food longer. A broken axle on a cart means hours of repair. Carving new wood with a hand adds. These challenges, though small, demand the same ingenuity as desert survival. You might improvise a splint for a camel's leg, or trade a spare dagger for medicine, drawing on skills honed over months of repetition. The legacy of your labor lies in the Silk Road's endurance. Your vigilance enabled the flow of silk to Rome, Buddhist texts to China, and glass to Japan, shaping cultural and economic exchange for centuries. The caravans you guarded carried not just goods, but ideas, mathematics from India, astronomy from Persia, laying the groundwork for global innovation. Your quiet resilience mirrors that of modern logistics workers, whose unseen efforts sustain global trade. Reflecting on this, you see how the mundane forged history. Your steps through the desert, your nights watching the stars, were threads in a vast tapestry. The Silk Road's legacy endures in today's global networks. But what of other unsung laborers? How did the miners of 19th century Britain, toiling in darkness, shape their own era's progress? The grueling shifts in 19th century British coal mines. Imagine yourself in the pre-dawn chill of a Yorkshire morning in 1840, standing at the mouth of a coal mine. You're a miner, one of thousands in Britain's industrial heartland, where the demand for coal to power steam engines and heat homes shapes your existence. The pithead looms before you, a wooden frame creaking under the weight of ropes and pulleys as you prepare for a 12-hour shift in the suffocating darkness below. Your life is defined by repetitive, backbreaking tasks, digging, hauling, and surviving in a world where every day blends into the next. These mundane labors, though grueling, fuel the Industrial Revolution, making you an unsung cog in a vast machine. Your shift begins with the descent. You step into a wicker basket or cling to a rope, lowered by a steam-powered winch into the mine's depths, sometimes 500 feet or more. The air grows damp, thick with coal dust that clings to your skin and lungs. Your only light is a Davy lamp, its feeble flame flickering in the stale air, casting shadows on jagged walls. You carry a pickaxe, shovel, and a tin water bottle, tools of your trade, worn smooth by years of use. The tunnel or face where you work is narrow, often forcing you to crawl or stoop, your back aching within minutes. The air is heavy, and the constant drip of water from the ceiling soaks your coarse woolen clothes. Your primary task is hewing coal. You swing your pickaxe at the seam, chipping away chunks that fall in a shower of black dust. Each strike reverberates through your arms, a rhythmic thud that fills the silence. The coal is irregular, sometimes soft enough to break easily, other times stubborn, requiring hours of effort for a single tub's worth. You shovel the coal into wicker corvees or iron tubs, which you drag to a central passage. This is brutal work. Your hands blister and your knees bruise from crawling over sharp rocks. Children, often as young as 8, work alongside you as trappers. opening and closing ventilation doors to keep air flowing, or as hurriers, pulling tubs through low tunnels, their small frames straining under the weight. Between swings, you pause to eat a hunk of bread, perhaps a slice of cold bacon twickly in the dark. Water from your tin is gritty, tasting of earth. Safety is a constant concern. You check the wooden props supporting the tunnel roof, listening for the telltale creak of shifting rock. Gas pockets, known as fire damp, lurk in the seams, and a spark from your pick could ignite an explosion. The Davy lamp, designed to prevent this, is your lifeline, but its dim light makes precision work agonizingly slow. The mine is a community, albeit a grim one. You share tasks with mates, swapping stories of village life or grumbling about wages often just a shilling a day. Solidarity keeps you going, but the monotony is relentless as your shift drags on. You wonder, what toll does this unceasing labor take on body and soul? How do you endure when the mine itself seems to conspire against you? You're back in the stifling depths of the Yorkshire coal mine, where the air tastes of dust and your Davy lamp casts a feeble glow. As a 19th century miner, your shift stretches. On each hour, a test of endurance against the relentless demands of the coalface. The repetitive tasks, hewing, shoveling, hauling grind at your body. But it's the unseen struggles, the constant battle against the mine's dangers, and the weight of routine that define your existence. These labors, though monotonous, are the heartbeat of Britain's industrial might, powering factories and railways, yet they leave you teetering on the edge of survival. Hewing remains your core task, but it's not just swinging a pickaxe. You must read the coal seam, knowing where to strike to avoid shattering the rock or wasting effort. Some seams are laced with shale, forcing you to chip away carefully to keep the coal marketable. Your muscles burn and sweat stings your eyes, but you can't stop. The overseer tracks your output, and a slow day means docked pay. The tubs you fill, weighing hundreds of pounds, must be dragged or pushed along uneven rails to the main shaft. In narrower tunnels, you rely on hurriers, often your own children or siblings, who crawl through muck, harnessed to the tubs like beasts of burden. Their small wages supplement your own, binding families to the mine's cycle. Ventilation is a constant concern. Trappers, stationed at wooden doors, ensure air circulates to dilute fire damp, but the system is rudimentary. You listen for the hiss of gas, or watch your lamps flame for signs of danger. A blue halo means retreat. Roof collapses are another. Fear. You wedge props into place, hammering them with a mallet, but the earth groans unpredictably. Flooding adds to the peril as water seeps through cracks, turning the floor to sludge. You bail it out with buckets, a Sisyphean task that leaves you soaked and shivering. Breaks are brief. You sit on a damp rock, sharing a pipe of cheap tobacco with mates to ease the tension. Conversation turns to strikes or rumors of new machinery, like steam-powered pumps that might lighten your load or take your job. Women and children, vital to the mine's operation, face their own burdens. Women haul coal in baskets, their skirts caked in mud, while children scurry through tunnels, their youth consumed by labor. You teach them to watch for danger, passing down survival instincts honed by years underground. The mine fosters a grim camaraderie. You help a struggling mate fill his tub or share your water when his runs dry. Yet resentment festers. Overseers who push for more output against mine owners who live in distant mansions. Wages barely cover bread, rent, and candles, and illness is rampant. The black spit of lung disease claims many. As your shift nears its end, you trudge toward the shaft, body aching, but the mine's grip doesn't loosen. What happens? When disaster strikes, a flood or an explosion, how do you and your fellow miners find strength to face another day? You're nearing the end of your shift in the Yorkshire coal mine, your body caked in coal dust, your davy lamp flickering as you haul the last tub to the shaft. The ascent to the surface feels like a rebirth, but the weight of the mine lingers in your bones. As a 19th century miner, your life of grueling repetition, digging, hauling, surviving has kept Britain's industries alive. Yet, it's the resilience forged in these dark tunnels that defines your legacy. The mine is both your livelihood and your adversary, and as you emerge into the gray dawn, you reflect on how these endless shifts shaped not just your fate, but the course of history. Crises were a constant shadow. A roof collapse could bury you in seconds. You'd seen mates crushed under falling rock, their screams haunting your dreams. Fire-damp explosions were rarer but deadlier, ignited by a careless spark. You'd rush to aid survivors, clawing through debris with bare hands, knowing the next shift might bring your turn. Floods were another menace, turning tunnels into rivers. You'd wade through knee-deep water, salvaging tools or propping beams to stem the flow. These disasters tested your ingenuity. You'd fashion makeshift supports from broken props or use rags to plug leaks, skills born from necessity. The 1842 Mines Act, spurred by public outcry, banned women and children under 10 from underground work, but enforcement was lax, and families still toiled together, bound by economic desperation. The mines community was your lifeline. You shared songs, ballads of lost comrades, or defiant strikes sung hoarsely in the dark. Strikes were risky. A walkout in 1844 won better ventilation, but cost weeks of wages. You'd pool pennies to help a sick mate, knowing the black lung might claim you next. Superstitions flourished. You'd tap the roof for luck, or avoid whistling, fearing it angered the mine's spirits. These rituals, however trivial, gave structure to chaos as shifts ended. You'd scrub coal dust from your skin in cold water, but the mine never truly left you. Your body bore its mark-scarred hands, stooped back, rattling cough. Yet your labor-powered steamships, factories, and railways driving Britain's global dominance. The coal you hewed lit homes and smelted iron, shaping an empire. Your resilience inspired reforms. By the late 19th century, better safety laws and unions emerged, driven by miners' sacrifices. Reflecting on this, you see parallels with today's unseen workers' factory hands, delivery drivers whose repetitive tasks sustain modern life. The miners' endurance, their ability to find meaning in grueling routine, echoes in efforts to improve labor conditions worldwide. Your work, though buried in darkness, lit the way for progress. But what of those who foraged in prehistory, their quiet struggles laying the foundations of survival? How did their forgotten labors shape humanity's earliest steps? The forgotten foraging of prehistoric hunter-gatherer step into the world of a prehistoric hunter-gatherer. Somewhere in the grassy plains of Europe around 10,000 BCE, the Ice Age is receding, and you roam with a small band of kin, your life woven into the rhythms of the land. Your days are filled with the quiet, repetitive tasks of foraging and hunting, a ceaseless effort to gather enough food to survive another day. These tasks, picking berries, digging roots, tracking game, are not the stuff of epic tales, but they are the foundation of human endurance, shaping the survival strategies that allowed your people to thrive in a world of scarcity and uncertainty. Your morning begins at first light as you leave the temporary camp of hide, shelters, or caves. You carry a few simple tools: a flint knife, a digging stick sharpened with a stone adze, and a woven basket of reeds. Your band, perhaps a dozen strong, spreads out across the landscape, eyes scanning for edible plants. You kneel in the damp grass, prying up wild turnips or cattail roots with your stick, their starchy flesh a staple of your diet. Berries, bilberries, or sloes grow in thorny patches, and you pluck them carefully, mindful of pricks and the need to leave some for tomorrow. Every plant requires knowledge: which leaves are safe, which roots need soaking to remove toxins. Lessons passed down through generations of observation. Hunting, though less frequent, is equally methodical. You track red deer or wild boar, reading hoofprints in the mud or broken twigs for clues. Your weapon's a spear with a flint tip or a bow with sinew stringer crafted by hand, a process that takes days of chipping stone and twisting plant fibers. You move silently, crouching in the underbrush, waiting hours for a clear shot. Often, you return empty-handed, as game is wary and fleet. When successful, you skin the animal with your flint blade, a slow task that leaves your hands sticky with blood, and preserve the meat by smoking it over a fire built with flint-struck sparks. Camp life revolves around maintenance. You sharpen tools on river stones, grind acorns into meal with a mortar, or weave nets from nettle fibers for fishing. Fire tending is constant. You feed it with gathered wood, blowing gently to keep embers alive. Meals are simple roasted roots, boiled greens, or dried meat cooked in hide pouches heated with hot stones. Water is fetched from streams, carried in hollowed gourds, a trek that might take hours. Children learn by watching, mimicking your movements as they gather twigs or sort seeds. Your band's survival depends on cooperation. You share food, tools, and knowledge, pooling resources to weather lean times. Stories told around the fire about a great hunt or a bountiful grove reinforce bonds. Yet the work is relentless, driven by the need to move with the seasons. As you gather hazelnuts under a fading sun, you wonder what happens when the land changes, when plants dwindle or game migrates. You're back with your hunter-gatherer band, roaming the plains of 10,000 BCE, where the land dictates your every move. The foraging and hunting that fill your days are not just tasks, but a delicate dance with nature, requiring constant adaptation to its unpredictable whims. The repetitive labor, digging, tracking, crafting demands patience and ingenuity as you navigate a world where a failed hunt or a barren patch could mean hunger. These mundane efforts, though uncelebrated, are the threads that weave your survival, honing skills that will shape humanity's future. Foraging is your lifeline, but the land is fickle. In spring, you gather tender shoots of wild leeks or sorrel, their sharp flavors, a welcome change from winter's dried stores. Summer brings berries and seeds, but you must compete with birds and rodents racing to harvest before they do. You learn to spot subtle signs, a cluster of bees hinting at a honey-filled hive, or a patch of disturbed earth where bulbs hide. Some plants, like bitter vetch, require hours of soaking or boiling to become edible, a process you manage with clay-lined pits heated by fire. You carry heavy baskets of foraged goods back to camp, your shoulders aching only to sort and store them in hide pouches or shallow pits lined with stones to deter pests. Hunting demands even greater adaptability. You follow migrating herds, reading the land for clues, droppings, grazed grass, or faint trails. A successful hunt is rare. You might stalk aurochs for days, only to lose them in dense woods. When you do kill, the work multiplies. You butcher the carcass, scraping hides with flint to make clothing or shelter. Bones are cracked for marrow or shaped into needles, a painstaking task using stone abraders. Smoking or drying meat takes days as you tend fires to keep flies away, ensuring the food lasts through lean seasons. Crafting and maintenance consume your downtime. You knap flint into blades, striking carefully to shape sharp edges, a skill that takes years to master. Sinew is twisted into cordage for nets or bowstrings, a repetitive task that blisters your fingers. Shelters need constant repair, rethatching with grass, or patching hides with bone needles. Mobility is key. You move camp every few weeks, following food sources, carrying everything on your back. This constant relocation means packing and unpacking, a tedious cycle that tests your endurance. You teach children to recognize edible plants or set snares for rabbits, passing down knowledge through demonstration. Disputes over food sharing are settled by elders, whose stories of past famines remind you to ration wisely. Lean times force hard choices, move to untested lands, or rely on less palatable foods like bark or insects. These adaptations, born of necessity, reveal your resilience as you sit by the fire, grinding seeds into meal. You sense the land changing warmer summers, retreating ice. How will these shifts reshape your routines? What new challenges await? As the world transforms around you, you're crouched by a stream in 10,000 BCE, washing roots as your hunter-gatherer band prepares to move camp. The endless cycle of foraging, hunting, and crafting has sustained you through seasons of plenty and scarcity, each task a testament to your resilience. These mundane labors, picking plants, tracking game, shaping tools, have not only kept your band alive but laid the groundwork for humanity's survival. As you pack your flint tools and woven baskets, you reflect on how your quiet persistence shaped a legacy that echoes through millennia, influencing the very roots of civilization. Crises were part of your life. A drought might dry up berry patches, forcing you to trek farther for food, your feet blistered from rocky paths. Failed hunts meant relying on less desirable fair grubs dug from logs or bitter herbs that upset the stomach. You'd improvise, weaving tighter nets to catch fish or crafting slings from hide to hunt small game. Harsh winters tested your stores. You'd ration dried meat or grind old seeds, mixing them with clay to stretch meals. These challenges spurred innovation. You learned to burn clearings, to encourage edible plants, or track herds by starlight, skills honed through trial and error. Community was your anchor. You shared every morsel, from a handful of nuts to a deer's haunch, ensuring no one starved. Elders taught you to read the land cloud patterns for rain, bird calls for predators, while you showed children how to flake flint or braid cordage. Rituals like painting ochre on hides or chanting around the fire gave meaning to the grind, binding your band through hardship. Mobility demanded cooperation. Moving camp required everyone to carry loads, from infants to heavy stone tools, fostering a collective strength that carried you through. Your tools and techniques were your legacy. The flint blades you knapped, the nets you wove, and the fire-starting methods you perfected were passed down, refined over generations. These skills enabled humans to spread across continents, from Europe to the Americas. Your foraging knowledge, knowing which plants healed or poisoned, laid the foundation for early agriculture as bands began cultivating wild grains. The cooperative ethos of your band influenced social structures, from tribal councils to early villages, shaping how humans organized. Reflecting on this, you see your labors mirrored in modern resilience: farmers tending crops, scientists studying plants, communities rallying in crises. Your quiet work, foraging under the vast sky, was the first step toward humanity's mastery of the environment. The knowledge you built, plant by plant, hunt by hunt, endures in today's sustainable practices and ecological awareness. But what of those who came later, like the Inca road builders, whose meticulous surveys connected empires? How did their patient labors shape their world? The systematic surveys of Inca road builders. Imagine yourself high in the Andes Mountains in the 15th century, a member of an Inca road building team tasked with expanding the empire's vast network, the Capac Own. You stand on a rugged slope, the air thin and sharp, surrounded by jagged peaks and terraced fields. Your role is not one of conquest or glory, but of meticulous labor, surveying and constructing roads that bind the Inca Empire from modern-day Colombia to Chile. These roads, stretching over 25,000 miles, are the empire's lifeblood, carrying messengers, armies, and trade goods. Your days are filled with repetitive tasks: measuring slopes, clearing stones, and planning routes. Each step a quiet act of precision that ensures the empire's cohesion. Your work begins at dawn as you gather with your team, often local laborers conscripted through the Inca's Mita labor system. You carry simple tools: a wooden staff for measuring, a stone hammer, and a bronze chisel. Your task is to survey the terrain, plotting a path that balances efficiency with the Andes' unforgiving geography. You pace out distances, counting steps to estimate lengths, and use knotted cords, or quipu, to record measurements. The quipu, with its colored strings and knots, is your ledger, tracking slopes, distances, and resources needed. You mark the route with stakes or cairns, ensuring it avoids unstable cliffs or flood-prone valleys. Clearing the path is grueling. You pry boulders from the earth with levers, your hands calloused from the rough stone. In rocky areas, you chip away at outcrops with your chisel, shaping the path to a uniform width, sometimes just a meter wide. 4-foot traffic broader for llama caravans. The Inca demand precision. Roads must be straight where possible, with gentle gradients to ease travel. You build retaining walls from fitted stones, hauling them into place without mortar, a technique that requires hours of trial and error to ensure stability. In swampy areas, you lay causeways of packed earth or logs, trudging through mud to level the surface. Your team's rhythm is relentless. You break only to chew coca leaves, their mild stimulant easing hunger and altitude sickness, or to eat a meal of boiled quinoa and dried llama meat cooked over a fire of dried grass. The Chasqui runners, who relay messages along the roads, pass by, reminding you of your work's purpose. Communication is key. You coordinate with other teams, sharing quipu data to align routes across vast distances. Community ties bind you laborers, sing Quechua work songs, their cadence matching the thud of hammers, while elders share tales of past projects. Like the road to Machu Picchu, the Andes test your endurance. Rain turns paths to mud and avalanches, undo days of work. Yet, your surveys ensure the empire's reach, connecting far-flung Sayas regions and enabling trade in potatoes, gold, and textiles. As you mark another cairn under a fading sun, you wonder, how do you overcome the mountain's relentless obstacles? What challenges arise when nature and human ambition collide? You're back on the Andean slopes, a 15th century Inca road builder, your hands gripping a bronze chisel as you carve a path through the empire's rugged heart. The Capac Own is more than a road. It's a testament to Inca ingenuity, and your role in its construction demands unwavering precision amid nature's chaos. The repetitive tasks cutting stone, laying paths, maintaining tools consume your days, each one a battle against the mountain's terrain and weather. These labors, though tedious, weave the Inca Empire together, ensuring its armies march, its goods flow, and its people remain connected. Your primary task is shaping the road itself. After surveying, you and your team cut steps into steep inclines, using stone hammers to chip away at granite. Each step must be uniform, tested by pacing or with a quipu to ensure consistency. In high passes, where oxygen is scarce, you work slowly, lungs burning, to build stone-paved sections that withstand frost and erosion. Retaining walls are your specialty. You fit stones so tightly that not even a blade of grass slips through, a process that involves lifting and adjusting each piece dozens of times. On cliffside routes, you construct suspension bridges from woven ichu grass, braiding ropes as thick as your arm. This weaving, done in teams, is monotonous, with hours spent twisting fibers under the sun or rain. Maintenance is endless. You clear debris from rock slides, hauling stones to the side or repurposing them for walls. In wet seasons, you dig drainage channels to divert runoff, shoveling mud with wooden tools. Llama caravans, carrying maize or textiles, wear down paths, so you resurface them with gravel or flat stones, kneeling for hours to level the ground. Tools dull quickly. You sharpen chisels on river rocks, a repetitive grind that blisters your palms. At night, you repair ropes or weave new baskets for carrying earth. Working by firelight to meet quotas set by Inca overseers, the Mita system binds your team, but it's also a source of tension. Laborers, drawn from local Elis communities. Work for months before returning home, and grumbling about fatigue or hunger is common. You share coca leaves and chicha corn beer to ease the strain, fostering camaraderie through Quechua songs or stories of Cusco's grandeur. Overseers, wielding quipu records, track your progress, and falling behind risks punishment, textra, labor, or reduced rations. Yet, your work supports the empire's infrastructure, from Tambo's way stations to storehouses, ensuring chasqui runners and armies move swiftly. Nature is your greatest foe. Avalanches bury paths, and rivers swell, washing out causeways. You rebuild, often improvising with local materials, logs, clay, or reeds. These challenges test your resilience, but they also reveal the Inca's foresight. Your roads are designed to endure centuries. How do you balance the empire's demands with the mountain's resistance? You stand on a completed section of the Capicone, an Inca road builder, gazing across the Andes, where your handiwork stretches toward the horizon. The stones beneath your feet, fitted with painstaking precision, are the culmination of months of repetitive labor, surveying, cutting, hauling. Your work has connected distant corners of the Inca Empire, from Quito to Santiago, enabling trade, communication, and control. You reflect on how these mundane tasks not only sustained the empire, but wove a legacy that outlasts its fall, shaping the Andes' history. Crises were constant. A sudden landslide could obliterate a week's work, forcing you to clear debris with bare hands and rebuild walls under time pressure. Flooded rivers demanded quick fixes, piling stones to divert water or weaving new bridges in days. You'd improvise, using vines to reinforce ropes or clay to stabilize paths, skills honed through endless repetition. Harsh winters froze the high passes, cracking stones and slowing progress. You'd chip ice from paths or huddle in tambos, burning dried llama dung to stay warm. These challenges tested your team's ingenuity as you devised new ways to anchor walls or drain swamps, often under the watchful eyes of Inca officials. Community was your strength. Your Ilu labored together, sharing tools and food, potatoes, quinoa, or roasted guinea pig. Elders taught you to read the stars for navigation or predict rain from cloud patterns, knowledge that guided your surveys. Children helped carry small stones or fetch water, learning the craft through observation. Rituals gave meaning to the grind. You'd offer coca leaves to the Apu mountain spirits before crossing a pass, seeking protection. Disputes over labor quotas or resources were settled through communal councils, reinforcing the Inca's social order. The Mida system, though demanding, ensured no one worked alone, binding you to your kin and empire. Your roads were more than paths. They were the empire's arteries. The Capac Own enabled Chasqui to relay messages in days, armies to march swiftly, and traders to move goods like feathers, shells, or gold. Your stonework, designed to withstand earthquakes, supported tambos and storehouses, ensuring supplies reached remote regions. This network strengthened Inca rule, integrating diverse cultures under one system. Centuries later, parts of your roads remain used by modern Andean communities, a testament to your precision. Reflecting on this, you see parallels with today's infrastructure workers, engineers, road crews, whose quiet labors keep societies connected. Your meticulous surveys and stone laying built an empire's foundation, much as modern systems sustain global networks. The Kapakwan's endurance shows how ordinary tasks create extraordinary legacies. But what of those who toiled in quieter corners, like Enlightenment-era librarians, cataloging knowledge? How did their patient work shape the world's understanding? The plodding paperwork of Enlightenment-era librarians. Picture yourself in a dimly lit library in 18th century London, surrounded by towering shelves of leather-bound books. You are a librarian during the Enlightenment, a time when ideas of reason, science, and progress are reshaping Europe. Your role is not one of grand discovery, but of meticulous stewardship, organizing and preserving the knowledge that fuels this intellectual revolution. Your days are filled with repetitive tasks, cataloging manuscripts, repairing bindings, and answering scholars' queries, each a small, deliberate act that ensures the spread of ideas. These mundane chores, though often overlooked, make you a guardian of the era's intellectual legacy. Your morning begins in the library's hush, the air heavy with the scent of vellum and ink. You sit at a worn oak desk, a quill pen in hand, surrounded by stacks of books and manuscripts. Your primary task is cataloging. You record each volume's title, author, and publication details in a ledger, your handwriting precise to avoid errors. The system, often based on the rudimentary schemes of the time, requires you to group books by subject: philosophy, natural history, theology, using handwritten cards or lists. A single mistake could render a book unfindable, so you entries, a tedious process that strains your eyes under flickering candlelight. Books demand constant care. You inspect bindings for wear, noting cracked leather or loose pages. Repairing them involves delicate work. You restitch folios with linen thread or apply glue made from animal hide, a sticky, slow-drying task. Dust is your enemy. You brush it from spines with a soft cloth, ensuring mold doesn't creep into damp corners. Some libraries, like those at Oxford or the British Museum, hold thousands of volumes, and you spend hours shelving them in order. Climbing ladders to reach high shelves, your arms aching from the weight of folios. You also serve scholars, from university dans to curious amateurs who seek obscure texts. You fetch books, deciphering their often illegible requests, and offer guidance on navigating the collection. This requires patience. A scholar might spend hours debating a single reference while you wait, ready to retrieve another volume. Between tasks, you copy manuscripts by hand, preserving fragile texts or preparing extracts for publication. Ink stains your fingers, and the quill's scratch is your constant companion. The library is a community hub. You share tea with colleagues, discussing new works by Voltaire or Linnaeus, while apprentices learn to bind books under your watch. Your work supports the Enlightenment's thirst for knowledge, making texts accessible to those shaping science, law, and philosophy. Yet, the routine is relentless hours of writing, shelving, and repairing with little recognition. As you close a ledger at dusk, you wonder, how do you keep up with the flood of new books and ideas? What challenges arise when the library's order is tested by chaos or neglect? You're back at your oak desk in the 18th century library, the soft creak of floorboards and the rustle of pages your only companions. As an Enlightenment-era librarian, your life is a ceaseless effort to impose order on a growing tide of knowledge. The repetitive tasks cataloging, repairing, assisting scholars consume your hours, each one a small battle against disarray. The library is a beacon of the era's intellectual fervor, but maintaining its structure amid new publications, damaged books, and demanding visitors tests your patience and precision. These mundane labors ensure the Enlightenment's ideas remain accessible. Shaping the minds of generations. Cataloging is your unending task. New books arrive, weekly scientific treatises, philosophical essays, or botanical surveys requiring a ledger entry, like natural philosophy or moral sciences. The influx overwhelms. A single day might see you record dozens of titles, cross-referencing authors and editions to avoid duplicates. Errors haunt you. A misfiled book could be lost for years, so you review entries meticulously, your quill scratching late into the night. Some libraries experiment with new systems, like alphabetical catalogs, but these require rewriting entire ledgers, a task that takes months. Book maintenance is equally demanding. You repair torn pages with rice paper and paste, a delicate process that requires steady hands. Rebinding a worn volume means dismantling it, sewing new signatures, and attaching boards, often taking days for a single book. You combat dampness by airing books on sunny days, turning pages to prevent mildew, a choreography that fills the library with the musty smell of old paper. Shelving is no simple task. You rearrange volumes to accommodate new arrivals, lugging heavy tomes up ladders, ensuring each fits precisely to maximize space. Scholars keep you busy. You fetch obscure texts for impatient academics, deciphering their vague requests, perhaps a French work on comets, or a Latin sermon from 1720. You guide them through the catalog, a slow process when they linger over irrelevant details. Copying manuscripts for publication or private study is another grind. You transcribe pages by candlelight, straining to read faded ink. Errors here could distort a scholar's work, so you check each line twice. The library's community sustains you. You train apprentices in binding or cataloging, sharing knowledge over weak tea. Colleagues debate Diderot's encyclopedia or Newton's latest findings, grounding your work in the era's intellectual pulse. Yet, tensions arise, budget cuts limit supplies, and patrons sometimes pilfer books, forcing you to track missing volumes. As you shelve a worn copy of Locke's essays, you wonder what happens when the library faces a crisis, like a fire or flood. How do you preserve knowledge when the tools of order falter? You sit at your desk in the fading light of the 18th century library, your quill resting after a long day of cataloging and repairing. As an Enlightenment-era librarian, your repetitive tasks recording, preserving, organizing have kept the wheels of intellectual progress turning. The library, a sanctuary of reason, owes its vitality to your quiet diligence, ensuring scholars could access the ideas that defined the age. As you close a ledger, you reflect on how these mundane labors not only sustained the Enlightenment, but left a legacy that shapes modern knowledge systems. Crises tested your resolve. A fire in a nearby library could destroy centuries of texts, forcing you to double efforts to protect your collection. You'd store valuable manuscripts in iron chests or move them to upper floors to avoid floods, a laborious task requiring hours of hauling. Theft was another threat. You'd patrol shelves, checking for gaps, or confront careless scholars who borrowed without permission. Budget constraints meant reusing old paper or diluting ink, slowing your work. When new books overwhelmed the shelves, you'd improvise, creating temporary stacks or persuading donors for space, a diplomatic task as taxing as cataloging. The library's community was your backbone. You mentored apprentices, teaching them to repair bindings or decipher keep-alike catalog systems, ensuring skills endured. Colleagues shared your burden, swapping stories of difficult patrons or rare finds, like a first edition Galileo. You organized reading sessions where scholars debated Rousseau or Hume, reinforcing the library's role as an intellectual hub. Rituals like dusting shelves on St. Jerome's Day gave structure to the grind, while communal meals of bread and cheese fostered bonds. These ties helped you weather disputes over limited resources or space. Your work had far-reaching impact. By cataloging and preserving texts, you enabled breakthroughs Linnaeus's taxonomy, Smith's economics, or Wollstonecraft's feminism reaching wider audiences. Your meticulous records influenced modern library systems, from Dewey's Decimals to digital databases. The books you repaired, like Diderot's Encyclopedia, spread ideas that sparked revolutions in thought and governance. Your quiet labor ensured knowledge was not a privilege but a shared resource, a principle that endures in public libraries today. Reflecting on this, you see parallels with modern archivists, digitizing records or preserving data, their work often unnoticed yet vital. Your painstaking efforts, page by page, built the foundation for open access to knowledge, shaping education and democracy. The Enlightenment's legacy risen inquiry, progressos, much to your silent scribeship. But what of other unsung laborers, perhaps those who toiled in different eras or places? How did their quiet work weave the fabric of history?